This show has been the talk of the town for some time, but I am ready to talk about it now, mainly because my friend didn't have time to watch the show or keep up with the drama in the same way that somebody as chronically online as myself does. So let's tell her about it. I am, of course, not the first person to talk about this on the internet, but I was there watching when the original scandal took place, and I watched the first season. And that's really all the credentials I need to blab to my friend and to the internet about it. So in this video, we will be discussing the swinging scandal that started everything, season 1, the aftermath of season 1, and also a little bit about Mormonism because I just can't help myself, okay? But this is only part 1. Many more parts are in the works currently. I just knew that I needed to split it up for time's sake. However, there is definitely a chance that I may miss something. I'm not a perfect person. I also considered inserting clips and pictures and TV show moments. That's too much for somebody with a full-time job, such as myself. And frankly, I was worried about copyright issues. So just know that this is all based off of TikToks I've seen, articles I've read, watching the show, etc. And I will verbally cite as much as I can remember to, but keep in mind that at the end of the day, I'm just a random girl on the internet. So there is no need to take anything that I say too seriously. Please don't. Everything that I'm going to say is true to my knowledge, except if I say otherwise, like I might tell you it's a rumor or if I state my own opinion. But feel free to take everything with a grain of salt because ultimately I'm here to have fun. Girls just want to have fun. Let me have fun. I'm not here to be a salary journalist. Just a couple housekeeping notes for anybody who missed the Jessica Simpson video that I did. I got engaged. Yay. I moved to Texas. Some not so great stuff though. 2 of my lights broke. I've only got 1 left and my phone is currently being held up by duct tape on it. Yeah. I also got an iPad thinking it would be a cheaper substitute for a new computer. No, not the case. But it's too late now, so I will be telling you all about this via notes on my iPad. Yay. Oh, and just a reminder that I filmed this over multiple days, so if my hair changes, if I suddenly have acrylics, that's why. I will keep this uniform consistent though. And without further ado, let's get into it. So I think before we talk about the scandal in the show, we need to talk a little bit about Mormonism itself, because that religion and Utah, where there is a high concentration of Mormons, are the backdrop for all of this, and I think it explains a lot. Obviously, this is going to be a huge reduction of an entire religion, because I don't have time to join the Mormon church, get a religious studies degree, read the Book of Mormon even. So we just are doing our research and that's all. But if you want to learn more, I am begging you to go watch Jordan and McKay, Viral Virtue. They are ex-Mormons. They have tons of information. I'm just going to generally cite them and Fundy Fridays for this background section because much of what I am going to tell you is relaying what I recall from watching their videos. I also do just kind of have a base level knowledge from some religion classes I've taken in the past, watching ex-Mormon content in general, but again, not an authority. Me? Not an authority on this or probably any subject, honestly. So if you want to learn more, I implore you to go check them out. I really just want to note a few things so that we have some context going in. So Mormons believe the baseline of Christianity plus a little extra because this dude, Joseph Smith, among others, claimed to be a prophet, wrote the Book of Mormon, gave more teachings that they claim are from God. So they consider themselves to be Christians, but not exactly what you're thinking. They're not like other Christians. They're the top 1%, okay? Because they think that in heaven, there is a separate section of heaven, a VIP section, if you will, reserved for just the Mormonisms. They're the elite. They're the celebs. What does the VIP section of heaven get you? I'm not exactly sure. I believe it's something about being able to be with your family, which sounds wrong that like the rest of us wouldn't be able to be with our family, but it wouldn't be the first time that I have said something that I thought sounded wrong and it ended up being true about Mormonism. And I do know that they have a system where you are tied, if you get married in the church, to your husband or your wife and your children for eternity, regardless of whether or not you actually end up liking those people. The interesting thing about Mormonism that Jordan and McKay have noted many times is that God can change his mind. And that really stuck with me because how could it not? It reminds me of the quote from the Drew Barrymore Cinderella when the stepmother says, "Nothing is final until you're dead. And even then, I'm sure God negotiates." But anyways, within Mormonism, they have prophets that I believe they elect. but these are basically the head of the church. These prophets share what they believe are messages from God, also interpretations of God's teachings or the teachings that have already existed from other prophets. So rules can change if they want or need them to. So it's possible that something that I say within this video may change in the future if a prophet says so. The other interesting thing about Mormonism is that the church encourages them to prep enough food to last a year in case of natural disasters, which is a good idea, but also in case of the second coming, which would basically be the end of the world, although the Mormons would survive it. And they even sell some food stuff for the Mormons to buy, to prep, which is where you start to think, there is profit involved with this. Not profit with a PH, which, as I've mentioned, are the heads of the church. Profit with an F. If you want to get married in the Mormon church, you have to go through a set of steps to ready you. They basically investigate you. They do this in Catholicism too, and I'm sure in some other religions. It's somewhat common. Of course, you also have the option to get married outside of the church, which I think you would do if they found that you weren't quite up to standard for getting married in the church, but then you are not tied to your family forever. They will discuss this in one of the seasons. You can also be disciplined within the Mormon religion, and you can be fully excommunicated. Can't get into the church, you're done. Which I think is pretty unique. I don't think that there's many religions these days that do that, at least to that extent. Like most Christian churches you can go to, you can step foot inside of, regardless of your faith or lack thereof, not Mormonism. That is not the case here. Tattoos are not generally allowed. Piercings besides like maybe 1 or 2 on your ear, not generally allowed. Drinks with alcohol, drinks with caffeine, use of substances, all prohibited. And they want you to dress modestly as well, which we will get to in a minute. Now, some of the religions or sects of religions that you're familiar with may also have ideology or rules or guidelines that you are expected to adhere to, expected to believe, and act according to. But that's not always what actually ends up happening, and there's not usually very much oversight or discipline. Not the case with Mormonism. The church monitors their behavior, they meet with church officials for check-ins, which can result in real consequences. They can even lose their temple recommend, which is basically their ability to go to church, if they are not behaving according to the rules, or the organization finds their behavior generally unsavory. So that's why we're discussing these rules. Because when we see women break these rules and still call themselves Mormon, just know that the Mormon church would likely, at the very least, discipline them, if not fully excommunicate them for some of these broken rules, at least if they weren't famous. I want to make clear that I don't care what these women choose to do with their lives. I'm not trying to police them. But I will mention if the church that they are actively advertising and representing publicly would police them for it. Because I think, as Jordan and McKay have said many times, that it is very important to have a clear view of what being in this religion looks like for the average member, for a non-influencer, for a non-celebrity. There are a lot of Mormon influencers, like a weird amount. I think partially because the church encourages documenting your life, from what I've heard. They also seem to care a lot about appearances, just from my opinion. So I think it does kind of come naturally. But sometimes the view that we're getting is not accurate for the average member, and it can be misleading. Now, when I mentioned modesty and I said we would get back to it, it's time, because we're going to talk about garments. These are a kind of special underwear that they receive in a special ritual. Not everybody goes through this ritual, so not everybody has them. If you do get them, you are obligated to wear them. And the sacred garments cannot show, but it's basically an undershirt and shorts. So everything that you wear needs to be able to cover them, which means you have to dress modestly. There are a few exceptions: swimming, working out, conjugal reasons, but you are meant to put them on directly afterwards. They're not joking around. From what I have heard, they are not comfortable. From what I have heard, they can give you yeast infections, so not ideal, but sacred to them. The church also comes with its share of controversies. They have a messy history with Black people, not giving them equal treatment. They believe that if you are LGBTQ and you act on those feelings, you are sinful. That's not that uncommon within religions, but worth noting because I disagree with it. And of course, purity culture is a big part of it. Again, not uncommon, but harmful. And as an example of this, in the Book of Mormon, they say the prophet Alma taught that sexual sins are more serious than other sins, except murdering or denying the Holy Ghost. Those are the only two above sexual sins. Nothing they can think of that's worse. So that's that. They also said, never do anything that could lead to sexual transgression. Do not do anything else that arouses sexual feelings. Do not arouse those emotions in your own body. And I think that that passage is a good indicator that they also prescribe to the don't let your brother in Christ stumble because of your clothing choices at women everywhere. Of course, corn, also not allowed. That will come up. I would venture to guess Adam and Eve sponsorships, not allowed. That's going to come up. Definitely many things that they don't want you to engage in. And it does very much give the impression of a culture that blames women for everything. Now let's talk about the origin of these women's content and the scandal that started everything. And to begin, we go all the way back to December of 2021 to Whitney, one of our main characters. Whitney's baby had gotten RSV and was in the hospital. Life-threatening situation. But when it had gotten a little bit better, Whitney's first thought was, let's do a TikTok dance. So she posts on the internet a video of her dancing next to her child in critical condition with a caption noting that he is in critical condition. As you can imagine, people didn't react to this well. Like, girl, this is serious. Cut it out. And that's a scandal that to this day, she has not been able to fully shake. Whitney also had a TikTok that she posted, I don't even know when, dancing to this song, One Margarita, I'ma Open My Legs. That one, y'all know that one? If not, go ahead and look it up. But just remember that when she appears to be judging the other women based on modesty, okay? Sometime in 2021, 2022, Taylor created Momtok with her and some other moms who also lived in Utah. I'm sure that they were all kind of loosely friends or friendly at the very least, but it was more of a networking thing, more of a club or a collab group. And many of the members have claimed over the years that the mission of Momtok is kind of like patriarchy fighting, particularly within the very patriarchal Mormon religion, because it gives them autonomy and money. But Taylor has said that she sees it as more of like a fun endeavor rather than a patriarchy smashing mechanism. And I think that probably is because she's not really being held back as much by those Mormon rules that some of the other women may be seeking to smash. But anyways, back to the inception of Momtok. January 18th of 2022 was the first instance of Taylor collabing with most of the women who are in the show. And I know that I haven't introduced them all yet. Trust me, we will get there. The videos seem to start with jokes about Mormonism or jokes about them being hot moms, but at some point it evolves into Taylor making jokes about sharing her husband with other women. I specifically remember one video where she's wearing a pink outfit and she claims that they have an open relationship. And of course, she was trolling, but also she wasn't far off. She was doing a lot of trolling around that time, though. There was another bit that she did very frequently where she pretended like she was the 50-year-old mother of two of the other members of Momtok. And the two main participants in that bit were Miranda and Camille, who genuinely look a lot alike. And all of them were actually friends outside of the Momtok group. In fact, Taylor was collabing with them before most of the other Momtok girls, and Taylor and Miranda specifically were BFFs. Again, Miranda is not here. She will appear at some point. She's not here now. We're saving a space for her. And we know that Miranda was involved in the swinging scandal that happened behind the scenes, in addition to a woman named McKenna. Many people also thought that Camille was involved, maybe because she looks so much like Miranda, or maybe just because she was another main character on Taylor's account, but it doesn't seem like that was the case. So what was going on with the swinging? I'm sure that's one of your initial questions that you came into this video with, and I'm so glad you asked. I'm going to tell you everything. I have pieced together this story based on what Taylor has said on podcasts, on TikTok lives, on interviews, on the show, and also from McKenna's account, because she has more recently come out and told her side of the story. But I do want to say before I get started that this entire tale that I'm going to tell you, let's just call it a tale. This is all alleged. I'm going to tell you a tale of internet drama. I wasn't there, so I didn't see it firsthand. So it started with just Taylor and her husband Tate, plus another couple, which does seem to have been Miranda and her husband Chase. So we have Taylor and Tate, we have Miranda and Chase. Okay, now 2 things to consider about how things stood before they went into this. Taylor had apparently asked Tate for a separation twice before the swinging even started and was looking for clarity. And from what they've said, it seems like every single couple involved had issues already going into it. Also, Taylor has said that besides herself, nobody had really experimented with anything. Sex, substances, alcohol, what have you. So basically this was them doing what most people get up to in high school and college. Not the swinging part, obviously, but that was baked in because they're already married. Taylor said that the first time anything happened, the boys had said, oh, wouldn't it be hot if the girls made out? They did, and thus started a pattern. That was also Tate, her husband's, first time drinking, and he didn't seem to regret it in the morning, so again, a pattern starts forming and they keep at it. And over time, things escalated, as they often do. Then they're taking pictures in lingerie, making out. Then they're doing activities in the same bed. Then there's some cross-touching while doing activities in the same bed. Maybe the girls are also making out. Maybe they're getting in the showers. Things of this nature. And the only rule that Taylor and Tate seem to have discussed during this time period was that they would not sneak off and be alone with other people. Everything had to be in full view of the other partner. And since Taylor and Miranda at the very least had children, you might be wondering, where were those children during these times? Well, apparently they were always either with a babysitter or asleep upstairs with a white noise machine on. Risky. After some time, the little group of 4 decide to add another couple in. McKenna and her husband, Braden. I think his name is Braden. If it's not Braden, it's Braden in this video, okay? McKenna was not on Momtok, and Taylor said that she'd actually only known her a couple of months, so not super well, but all of the men were close friends. And at this point, it seemed like McKenna and Braden were way more into it than Miranda and Chase, although I do think that they were still present to some degree, but Taylor said that it felt like at least one of them was not as into it. I'm going to guess Miranda, but that is just a guess. So that being said, things start to escalate between Taylor and Tate and this new couple, McKenna and Braden. And since we're talking about adding people in, Taylor has mentioned that there was a couple or 2 that sometimes would watch, but would not participate. And they were also not on Momtok. So when these things would happen, they would usually take place at either a cabin that they would rent or at Taylor's house as kind of an after party to larger parties that they hosted. Like the sleepover after a birthday party where only the cool girls are invited. Similar, okay? And from what they've said, it seems like it always started with playing games like spin the bottle, blindfolded sort of kissing games, truth or dare, etc. And then they would progress from there. Now, Chase has since said in an interview with Us Weekly that the soft swinging was never predetermined, which is one of the reasons he cites for why him and Miranda initially will deny involvement and why they felt kind of slighted by Taylor's characterization of the events. I don't know if it matters if it was predetermined when what happened is still the same. And also, I would question whether or not you did know that it was going to happen, because at some point you've hung out with these people numerous times and it's happened every single time. Let's make some educated guesses. You don't necessarily need to put it in writing on an evite to know what's going to happen with a certain group of people when the same thing has happened every single time that you've seen them. You know? And at this point, they're all hanging out like twice a week. They're texting each other regularly, all in addition to the sexual stuff. So they're getting very close. Then Taylor and Tate go on a cabin trip with McKenna and Braden. It doesn't seem that Miranda and Chase were present for this. But at this cabin trip, they almost fully swap. Fully. But Tate has a last minute realization and pulls out of it, so to speak. Because he thinks, wait a second, if one of these women gets pregnant, we won't know who the father is. That might be a tricky situation. Plus, supposedly, Braden was starting to get a little bit jealous of Tate and McKenna being together. It's starting to feel like we're going down a bad path. I don't know why it's just starting to. At least they got there eventually. Tate thinks that they should at the very least stop doing it with their friends because he can see tensions building. He can see feelings starting to occur. Maybe they could do it with strangers, but it does seem like he just fully wanted to stop. Taylor, not so much. She's having a good time. And it seems like they ended up continuing despite Tate's reservations. And then Taylor says that she caught feelings for McKenna's husband, Braden. Additionally, Chase, Miranda's husband, has a crush on Taylor now. So now 3 out of 6 of them have feelings. A triangle is starting to form. We are in a danger zone. And Taylor is starting a full-fledged emotional affair with Braden, according to her account. Taylor has also said that one of the husbands, my guess is that it's Chase, just based on context clues, but that is just a guess. One of the husbands would often spend the night at their house after these occurrences, even though his wife would go home. And nothing happened without her there, but still sketchy vibes, especially since Taylor and Tate are in separate bedrooms. Not because of marital problems, just for comfort, but it's weird. So when everything blows up, Chase, Miranda's husband, approaches Taylor at the gym and confesses that he has feelings for her. She does not have proof of this because it was in person, but she goes home and tells Tate. Of course, he's not pleased by that, but he knows that they did this to themselves. And Taylor also told McKenna about it, who then goes ahead and tells a bunch of other people, so basically the cat's out of the bag. Miranda, of course, then calls Taylor. Why didn't you just call Taylor up? She calls Taylor up and says, what the hell? Did my husband confess that he had feelings for you? Taylor denies this, but it's eating her up inside. So when they hang out with all of the couples at Miranda's house that night, Taylor decides she's going full blackout mode due to not wanting to be there. And she heads into a corner to ruminate. She's not hiding this well. McKenna's husband, Braden, also makes his way over to this corner to chat with her. And then supposedly Chase got jealous of this, and so he drew the entire party's attention to the fact that they were chatting in the corner together by themselves, which kind of annoyed Tate. He went over to inspect the situation, and at this point, Taylor decides it's time for her to dip, and she has a friend come and collect her. At this third-party friend's home, Taylor is getting calls from all of the men, all 3 of them, who are trying to come and pick her up. Messy, messy, messy. Initially, she declines all of these offers, but she does say where she is, and eventually she does end up agreeing to let McKenna's husband, Braden, come and pick her up, the person that she is, at this point, having an emotional affair with. She claims that she initially said no to him and said that it was inappropriate, but then Braden claimed that McKenna also wanted him to pick her up and stay at their house for the night, and that it was like all above board, so then she agrees. Now, here's where things get murky, as if they weren't already, but things are really getting murky. Braden and Taylor end up hooking up. I think that it was at the neutral friend's home and that they spent the night there, but it's unclear. But they definitely hooked up. Fully, physically hooked up. It is not just an emotional affair anymore. Taylor was blackout. She doesn't remember any of this, okay? The only reason that she knew that they for sure consummated a physical relationship was because of the physical feelings that she felt in the morning in the areas where things might be consummated, you know? But she does claim that this was consensual. And I'm not going to make a victim of her if she doesn't want to be one. However, that doesn't really sound very consensual to me. Now, I'm not saying that all drunk is, but it can and does happen, okay? And also, many people were mentioning in the comment section of the video where she told this story, which I want to say was a Vile Files podcast, but don't quote me on that. I think it was, though. I'm pretty sure. That one, he definitely knew that she was drunk because he knew that she needed to be picked up. So he knew that she was intoxicated. And 2, because he's the one who picked her up in his vehicle driving, he either deserves a DUI or was sober and still chose to hook up with somebody who he knew was heavily intoxicated. And 3, if you're waking up messed up down there, as she claims she was, that's a direct quote, I do think that's cause for concern and a potential warning sign that perhaps you have been victimized. Moving on though, Tate picks her up in the morning. He asks her about what went on. At first, she denies anything happened, as apparently she and Braden had agreed that they would deny everything. But eventually, she confesses everything. As I mentioned earlier, her and Tate were struggling already going into this whole mess. So they decided that they would give it the summer and see where things go following the affair, but they both knew it was done from her account. Tate was blindsided in one aspect, though, because he only knew about Chase liking her. He didn't know that she and Braden had also been having an emotional affair. He didn't know both dudes wanted her. So that was a surprise for him. Initially, when Taylor tells Miranda, her best friend at the time, about this whole ongoing with Brayden, Miranda's like, as bestie, I will stick beside you. That is until Tate reveals to Miranda that Chase did in fact confess feelings for Taylor, despite her denying it a few days ago. At that point, Taylor needs to produce some evidence of this for Miranda, but all she has is some texts from Chase where he says he has a secret he needs to tell her, which to me feels damning, but apparently was not enough for Miranda. So at this point, Taylor claims that Miranda retracted her support from Taylor Nation. Okay, and is getting on the denial train with Chase and start claiming that Taylor is lying about his confession of feelings. And on top of that, allegedly Miranda told their other friends who were not involved in swinging that Taylor had had an affair. And it seems like there was no mention of the whole swinging operation, which leaves out a lot of context for what happened. And I'm not saying she didn't have an affair. Taylor did have an affair. But it's also leaving out a lot of contextual information, especially contextual information that would hurt Miranda's image while actively tarnishing Taylor's. On May 20th of 2022, Taylor posts on TikTok that she is getting a divorce. And apparently at this time she was still seeing Brayden because him and McKenna were also getting a divorce. It seems like they were having a sunk cost fallacy moment, but that will end, of course. Just a few days after her initial announcement of the divorce on May 23rd, she makes another video that says, "My entire life falling apart, and I can't even speak on why, without bringing them all down with me." Ooh, she knows how to give us a cliffhanger. However, at this time, most people still think that she's trolling, even though they are increasingly saying that they think she has gone too far, especially when she posts a slideshow of pictures of her and Tate and claims that she is moving out of their home. But she was not, in fact, trolling, and a couple days later, on May 25th, she would be speaking out on why all of this blew up. According to her, the reason that she started airing it out was basically because the whole scandal was already being leaked on Reddit. And they do mention this at the beginning of the season, claiming that it may be somebody from Momtok. They don't bring forth any evidence of this, but I would assume that they know. So my belief is that they're correct and it was somebody from Momtok or adjacent group. I have seen many people theorizing that it could be Camille, the one who looks a lot like Miranda and made lots of videos with her and Taylor in the early days, because maybe Miranda told her everything firsthand, but that's not confirmed by any means. Really, who knows? But anyways, because it's on Reddit, Taylor's comment sections start to be flooded with cheater, cheater, and her friends in Momtok are liking it, basically confirming the allegation. And one thing to know about Taylor, she's a live wire. So they're implying they want to blow shit up? Oh, okay. So let's blow shit up. And she decides to tell the whole story. Taylor does a TikTok live where she says that they were all soft swinging. Of course, all includes her husband because they're swinging, but the rest of that is very unclear, which will cause a lot of friction in this group because every other woman on this board, except Taylor, was not involved. We now know that all was McKenna, Brayden, Miranda, and Chase, but all implies all. Furthermore, Taylor says that she and one of the other husbands stepped out of their agreement with the soft swinging, that they would all be in full view of each other, aka cheated, and so she would be getting a divorce. After Taylor's first live, Miranda and Chase decide to go live. They deny everything, deny any involvement with the soft swinging. They deny that Chase had any feelings for Taylor, and they say that they are no longer friends with Taylor because she was going around telling everybody that Chase had confessed feelings for her, which again, they are going to go ahead and deny. But then photos of Miranda and Taylor are leaked. You know what kind of photos. They were on Miranda's OF. Miranda claimed that these were taken at a bachelorette party before she ever had kids and that they were posted without her consent. But the people of the internet did some sleuthing, as they often do, and they discovered that Miranda didn't know Taylor before she had kids, so that's not adding up. And also, like I said, these were posted on Miranda's OF under her legal name, and they're apparently very strict about identity verification on that website, so it would have been very unlikely for somebody else to have posted them. Also, just the fact that she had an OF, pretty taboo in normal societies, let alone in the Mormon religion, so it did make them look very guilty. So people theorize that these photos were from a swinging event, especially because you can see a man in the background of one, and people think that there are two different girls in the pictures. And allegedly, later on, Taylor said on her story that these photos were actually from a cabin party. as I mentioned before, they would rent out cabins for these sort of swinging events. After that, Taylor does a second live where she claims that Miranda and Chase really wanted her to clear their name. So she will do just that, which is objectively a hilarious way to out them while also technically doing what she said she would. Throughout the last half of June, Taylor is constantly posting on TikTok shading people. For example, she posts a video that says, "When they block you but still watching your every move," and she's giving the camera the finger, basically just being like, I don't give up, losers. And many people think that that one specifically was directed at Miranda. Another video she posted said, "When the mean girls from Momtok are now trying to be my friend." And the caption was, "People will love and support when it's beneficial. I'm a forgive, but not a forget." She's mad. She's mad. And another one. Text on the screen is, "I wasn't involved. I would never," which is basically like quoting Miranda. And the audio is that one that's like, "Girl, shut up, because ain't nobody going for none of that." That one, do we know what I'm talking about? If you don't, I literally just said it, so now you do. And the caption was like, "Guess I was in a pineapple group by myself." She is calling them out, one TikTok at a time. She is taking no prisoners. And she was still going to air out her love life as well, because in July, she posts a TikTok claiming that she had been lied to all summer. Some people think that this was about Dakota, but I don't think it is. Following the timeline that she gave in her Vile Files interview, her and Dakota would have just met. So I don't think it's possible that he would have already lied to her. I mean, he might have already lied to her, but she hadn't found out yet by that point, I think. So we will get there. Don't worry. I think this was about Brayden, the emotional affair partner, if I had to guess, but who's to say? Could be anybody, but I don't think it's Dakota. Also, around this time, she gets a call from the Mormon church, which she does not answer. Yeah, good choice. It's unclear if that would have been disciplinary or if it was just like something else administrative, a missionary calling her. But as far as I'm aware, to present date, she has not been disciplined in any meaningful way, at least, by the church. I'd guess she wouldn't care at all, even if they did. But as far as I know, they haven't. And people, of course, did ask her about this. But basically, she was like, "I've been giving them a hell of a lot of marketing for free. Okay? They are getting clicks. Why would they bite the hand that feeds them?" People have never been that interested in Mormonism, ever. Their SEO just, it went through the roof. Whoever was handling it before, sorry to them, they probably got fired because Taylor was giving them free marketing. And there we see a prime example of hypocrisy in the Mormon church, because let's be real, if she was not an influencer, if Miranda was not an influencer, they were just girls in the neighborhood and they had this whole swinging scandal with cheating, she would have been called into the office. Come on, she would have been called into the office. I mean, at the very least, I'm sure they would want the details since she wouldn't have done a live explaining everything. Now, going back to this man, Dakota, that I mentioned earlier, I believe they met around July of 2022. Of course, I can't be absolutely sure of it. I'm not behind the scenes with them, but that is my best guess for now. So, Dakota is a recovering addict and also a TikToker. And they started talking this summer. And while they were not exclusive, they have both made that clear. They were not exclusive, but there was definitely feelings. There was definitely intimacy. However, he was also talking to a girl named Jenna, which Taylor was not aware of at the time. Which, like, he can definitely date whoever he wants if they're not exclusive. But Taylor said she asked for 100% honesty up front. That's all the girl wanted. And that request was clearly not being respected whatsoever and will continue to not be respected. Let's be real. So when she posts a TikTok with him and some girl replies saying that he slept with her friend last week, she's like, first of all, womp womp. But second of all, can you just be honest? Because she was kind of pissed that he didn't say anything to her about it, and he apologizes. So okay, they're all good. Still in a gray area, not exclusive, but I would guess a better understanding of what is expected. A couple days later, they hook up. Then the next night she invites him over and he says, "Oh, it's guys' night, can't go." He even sends photo evidence of this. She's like, "Cool, no problem." Turns out he was with Jenna. Confirmed. He was with Jenna. So that's going to go ahead and be categorized under lies that he has told. I'm not keeping a running tab because that would just be exhausting, but he's going to tell a lot of them. And get this. The next day, she hangs out with Jenna at this pool party. They both don't know. But Jenna does hear something at that pool party that perks her ears up, and she's like, I think I need to do some digging. And thank God for that. So she figures out about Taylor and Dakota seeing each other. She even calls him and asks him about it afterwards. It's unclear what he said to her in reply, but he does hook up with Taylor that same night. A couple weeks later, Taylor and Dakota decide they want to be exclusive. And he does admit that he kissed a girl a few weeks ago. She's like, okay, no problem. At least you're being honest about it now. Seems like an improvement. But then she scratches the surface just a little bit and finds that whole Jenna sandwich. She's pissed, of course, and she still hasn't let that shit go. And I don't blame her, especially because all of this information that I've just summarized was released to her bits and pieces over time. She's consistently discovering new information that has been hidden from her, new information that has been glazed over, details that were not shared. Just a slow trickle of facts coming through that are confirming over time that he cannot be trusted because he will never give her the full truth. She's always going to find it out this way. Getting back to the girls before I become fully enraged, she answers a TikTok question asking if all of the Momtok girls just abandoned her, essentially. To which she replies with a video of her and Macy saying that she stuck around. And Macy, she's our girl. But the thing is, Macy was not the only one that stuck around. In fact, Whitney was the first one to reach out to her following the whole swinging scandal, and Michaela also stuck by her through this. And later they will both express that they were a little bit hurt by the implication that only Macy stuck around because they were also there and offering support. On September 14th of 2022, Taylor does a Q&A. So let me give you the highlights of that. She says she's still friends with 98% of Momtok. She claims she's still Mormon and that she has not been excommunicated, citing what I told y'all earlier about how she's giving them free marketing. Misleading marketing, but marketing nonetheless. She says she would never swing again, and she also said she was dating, but she was scared because of the timing, but she really likes him and it's going well, so she's just gonna take a risk, take a chance, make a change and break away. I wish she would break away from the Mormon church. That's not what's happening though. She's just dating Dakota, which I hate. And then September 30th, Momtok is back, baby. She makes a video with a bunch of girls, and among them is Macy, Michaela, Whitney, Demi, and Layla. So our cast of characters is starting to form. Okay, now that we've gone through the original scandal, we're going to get into the actual season of the show, because while we don't have approximate dates for the things that happen throughout the season, I think logically it makes sense that they are occurring after everything that I've just told you. And then we'll discuss the press leading up to and after the release. So to summarize, we're basically going through the timeline from the point of view of the people that were actually living it, rather than in the order that the information was released to us, the general public. Into the season we go. Now, there were other girls, definitely including Miranda, and I think maybe also including McKenna, who were offered the show, but turned it down because they didn't want to do it if Taylor was doing it. And Taylor's ex was, of course, also considered for the show, but him and his fiance at the time, I don't know if they got married. I'm not keeping up with him. He doesn't want to be kept up with. That's why he didn't do the show. He was like, I'm protecting my peace. I'm protecting our children's peace. So they're out. But here's who we do have. Starting off with Macy. Macy is in her late 20s. She is an honest-to-God Mormon, the whole shebang. She goes to church on Sunday. She has a calling, which is basically just an unpaid job within the church. And she has a temple recommend. Now, that part is a big deal because it basically means that she is a good enough Mormon in the eyes of the church's leadership to be attending church. And she still has that temple recommend at least following season 1. However, she's not perfect either. She got pregnant out of wedlock. There is a whole tragic story. She actually released a book, and I would recommend everybody reading it. I have found out a lot about her life in the researching of this and in watching of the other seasons. They don't really get into it too much in season 1, so I'm not going to talk about it in this video for the most part, but we will discuss it later, probably in season 2 or season 3. There's a lot to unpack, but I would say reading her book is probably a worthwhile endeavor, honestly. We also have Jen. She is in her early to mid-20s. I think she's around 24 when the show starts. She is another honest-to-God Mormon, but she has also admitted that at one point she kind of broke from the church when she was a little bit younger and she was drinking and smoking and not saving herself for marriage. She had her wild child days, and we don't judge that at all. But I think she does because she didn't like that, and she's gone back to the church since then. And while she comes from a lower income background, she did marry into like a filthy rich, well-respected family. So it appears that there is some class dynamic at play. Her husband, who she claims is related to Ben Affleck. He's not. He's definitely not. I can't say definitely, but he's probably not. He doesn't even think he is. Apparently, it was some joke that his family told her, and she's running with it. Right next to her, we have Whitney, who is in her late 20s, early 30s, around there. She is the one who had the RSV scandal with her baby, posting TikToks from the hospital. And she is another honest to God Mormon. I keep calling them honest to God Mormons, and that's just going to be my bit throughout this, I guess. I don't know. Michaela, however, who is in her early to mid 20s, was raised Mormon, but described it as a loose practice and has not been active in over a decade at this point. And I believe at this point, she's just kind of Christian. General Christian. She also has a harrowing past that also is not really discussed in this season and will be discussed later. So that's when we'll talk about it. But just to be brief, she was abused as a child. She left home very young and then got pregnant with her husband's child when she was 16 and he was 21. So that's going to go ahead and be a felony charge. Felony charge. What the But he didn't go to jail. Instead, they got married and had more children, even. They have a lot of them. At least in this season, she claims to be happy. She claims that he's a good father and a good husband. But I'm not going to rescind my because I stand by it. I do. She also at this time is dealing with a chronic illness, which does come into play, but there's not a ton to say about it. Anybody who's dealt with a chronic illness knows it's just living hell. Over here, we also have Jessie. Jessie's in her early 30s, and she owns a whole ass hair empire. Not an ass hair empire, just a hair empire. She owns a hair empire. And sorry to her for making it sound like she owned an ass hair empire, but if she wants to get into waxing, I can always amend. She was previously Mormon. She also previously swung in a marriage, but she is now divorced, remarried, and not swinging and not Mormon. Right above her, we have Demi, who is in her late 20s, early 30s. She was also raised Mormon and still claims to be Mormon, but is definitely loose with the rules. She's drinking. She was divorced and got remarried to a man who is much older than her. People at this time are referring to him as Peepaw. You may be familiar with Peepaw. You know Peepaw? Yes. That's going to go ahead and be her husband right there, Brett. And he did know her when she was a child. Weird. But they started dating when they were both of legal age. He apparently was going to go on The Bachelor, went on The Bachelor. Didn't care to look that up, the specifics of it. I think just the fact that he was interested in The Bachelor kind of tells us the vibes that we're looking at there. Demi was actually the one who nominated him for that when she was married, but then he went or didn't go. I don't know. And when he came back, they were both single. They get married. He was also previously married to Angie from Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, and they are co-parenting. So he is known around town, well known around town, and clearly loves some reality television. Again, I think that just explains the vibes. Next to her, we have Layla, who is in her early 20s, also technically Mormon, I believe, but she doesn't seem too interested in it generally. She is divorced. She has 2 kids, and she is one of the only people of color on this cast, except for Jen, who is Hispanic. It's not really that surprising considering how unkind the church has been to people of color. I think my camera might have been like lopsided for maybe half an hour. My bad. Anyways, at the outset of the show, Layla, it might still be, don't care. At the outset of the show, Layla has never orgasmed. That is much more important than my camera being lopsided. Free her. Luckily, it is not forever though, thanks to vibrators. And finally, we have Taylor. Taylor is in her late 20s, early 30s. As we know, she is the author of Momtok. I don't think that's even up for debate. They will pretend to debate it throughout this show. It's not up for debate. She's the author of Momtok, and she was also part of the swinging scandal. Surely you've heard her name by now. It's not like I said it 20 times. Anyways, she does consider herself to be a Mormon, but she's not really adhering to any of the rules, and she's not afraid to be a sinner either. Saints and sinners is going to be a theme throughout this season. I'm also going to go into her lore a bit more right now. although I wasn't doing it as extensively for the other girls, she's the one whose storyline is really explored the most in this season. The other girls will have their moment. It's just not right now. So her biological father was an addict, and her parents had her as teens, so he ended up signing his rights away. Naturally, the issues are going to follow with that. Although she did have a stepdad who adopted her, still. Is it a coincidence that her biological father was an addict and Dakota is an addict? I don't know. Freud might have something to say on the subject. I'm not a psychologist, so I can't say. Taylor was a self-proclaimed wild child as a teenager. All the stuff that you can think of that teenagers are wanting to get up to, she was getting up to it. But she has also said that she was pressured into having a temple wedding, Mormon temple wedding, very conservative, pressured by her mother. So there's some mother things going on as well. And on her honeymoon with her ex-husband, her biological father died. So she never got to meet him, never got to ask him any questions, which she wanted to do. At the time of the season starting, she is divorced and is dating Dakota. I'm not going to give an overview of all of the men because really, they're side characters. That's why they just have tiny little heads next to the headshots of their wives. But all I'll say is I don't like that man. In episode 1, we dive into Taylor and Dakota's relationship a little bit more. They met on Instagram. It's very tumultuous. They're talking about marriage. They're also fighting drunk. So, would marriage be a good idea? Probably not. He is an addict, as I mentioned, which will be held against him, not by Taylor, but by others. And also, as I mentioned, they had issues with him hooking up with other girls and hiding it or dating other girls or whatever. Honestly, she's not even sure if dating him is a good idea because she's only been divorced for like a month at this point. She just started a reality television show. Her life is kind of in shambles. I wish she would listen to that little voice in her head telling her it's not a good idea. That voice should be listened to, but she's not going to. Her mother and family also hate him, and I can't help but agree with them on that. And speaking of her family, we also meet her mother, Leanne, in this episode, who is quite intrusive and quite judgy. She's clearly a more devout Mormon and wants her daughter to be that way, but her daughter isn't that way, and she just can't accept it, it seems. Her mom says she should focus on her kids right now, which, true, but the minute that Taylor mentions that she may need to take a pregnancy test, caring for your children goes right out the window. For Leanne, she becomes very mean and aggressive towards her daughter at that point. My feelings towards Leanne, they definitely don't lean positive. I think having her as a mother would be a tough experience, frankly. Many of the things that she does, the ways that she chooses to comport herself, would throw me into such a fit of rage. And that's, I guess, that says all I need to say. Obviously, I'll be shit talking later, but we need to move on to Whitney. In episode 1, Whitney is telling us about how she moved to Hawaii for 2 months. She studied abroad, okay? I don't know if I would use the term moving, but she's on her way back because she has serious FOMO now that they're all getting attention and starting a TV show. And at the very same time, she hates Taylor for having talked about the whole thing. It's a power struggle that we will continue to flesh out. But I think ultimately we all kind of discovered that it's more a figment of Whitney's imagination than anything else. Taylor's on top and we all know it. But maybe all of those thoughts and feelings about Taylor are really just to distract herself from the fact that her husband was on Tinder. And also everybody thinks he's gay. Side note. She is denying all of that for now, but we will circle back. We'll circle back. So when we first meet the girl group, neither Whitney nor Taylor is present. They've both kind of just been isolating for all of the reasons that we just discussed. So the girls are all gossiping about it, naturally. They're sharing stories, they're swapping theories. And Demi, interestingly enough, thinks that Taylor was actually trying to swing with her man, Peepaw. I can't know him as Brett any longer. I'm sorry, the internet has done this to me and that's not my fault. He's Peepaw. But Demi was not about to have Taylor swinging with her Peepaw. It does seem, though, like maybe he would have been interested if that option had presented itself, which, again, we don't know that it really did. That's just what Demi is claiming. Taylor and Whitney do finally get together with the girls, though. First, they have lunch with Michaela. It is incredibly uncomfortable. It is tense. It's very much like pretend friendship vibes at first, and then immediately we're getting down to business. I don't trust you at all. I don't trust you. They don't like that Taylor was mentioning names on the live when she was airing everything out. And from what I remember, she was only mentioning their names in conjunction with letting everybody know that they were not part of it. But I don't think that they wanted their names even closely associated with the whole thing. So that bothered them. And Taylor says, well, okay, I'm not sorry. Frankly, I just knew that everything was going to come out anyways. And for people who really didn't like it, you sure did seem to make a lot of content off of it, which I assume you monetized. So if you really had such a problem with it, why were you fanning the flames? However, Whitney has since said that this scene was edited in a very misleading way. And what they were actually confronting her about was the TikTok that she made with Macy that implied that she was the only person that stuck by her through the whole scandal, when Whitney and Michaela also did, as I mentioned earlier. I'm inclined to actually believe this. I don't always believe it when people are like, that was edited weird, but sometimes I do. And this is one of those sometimes. After this lunch, Whitney dyes her hair red, so clearly she's going through something. And as somebody who has also dyed her hair red numerous times and probably will in the future, I am 100% behind her on that choice. 100%. And that new red hair, ooh, it gives her the confidence to go and tell her husband, I'm not lying for you anymore. Because guess what? You'll never believe this, but her husband actually was on Tinder. She has since said on the Vulnerable podcast that she initially found out about him being on Tinder via a snark video, and she thought it was totally a joke. So much so that, like, on their family vacation, she showed it to him and was laughing, and he was laughing along because they were on a family vacation. But when they returned home, no more laughing. No more giggles. So this was happening their entire marriage. He claims he never met up with anybody, but he was sending and receiving via web connection, and also had a addiction. There are stories I'd like to tell at this point that I can't tell. And I just want y'all to know that there are stories that I'd like to tell. I won't be telling them, but I just want you to know. Okay, not being funny anymore at all, actually. I just want to add the context that Connor has since told us that he was SA'd as a child. I don't know if that played a role in his actions, and I'm not saying that his actions were okay, even if it did, but I just felt like I should add that in. He talks about it extensively in the season 2 reunion if you want to hear it straight from him, but I just felt like I should put it in here as long as I'm airing out all their business. Like, let's just do it all at once, everything that they've shared. There's no good way to add that in, and I just would rather do it now. But anyways, Whitney said on the No Filter podcast with Zach Peters that she did feel quite a bit of pressure from the Mormon church to keep their marriage intact regardless of the cheating. However, she also got a therapist who told her, you do actually have a choice in this matter. You can choose either way. And she chose to stay with him. So that's where we're at now. So they've been denying the rumors together for quite a while, but Whitney now feels it's truth time. So Whitney tells all the girls at this very clearly orchestrated hangout. She does also mention him being confused. Is that a vocab word that the producers put into the script intentionally? I don't know. But it definitely feels like alluding to a ginormous rainbow elephant in the room. You know, because there was rumors that it was Grindr and not Tinder. But later on, she mentions girls. He has said that he's straight. And you know what? It's not easy to come out as straight. It is not easy. So I support him. And I'm fine with whatever he wants to say. I don't care what he's up to. We can circle back at any time if he would like to do anything else. All jokes aside, he is my favorite of all of the husbands. He's really embraced the jokes about his sexuality, honestly. He makes them himself sometimes now. I'm guessing he recognizes that he's cooler than the other husbands, and if that's the worst thing that's being said about him, he's doing pretty well, because the rest of them need some work. But let's get back to the room where it happened, okay? The girlies are hanging out, and after this reveal, Taylor responds with suspicion, frankly. She's like, how do you know? How do you know that he wasn't meeting up with girls? And do I think she's projecting in this moment? Yes, of course. But also, as a friend, I would want to comb through the evidence too. But Taylor also has her own news to share, that being her ectopic pregnancy that has her in and out of the hospital. Totally understandable that that would be the only thing on your mind if it was happening. However, Whitney is definitely annoyed that Taylor is outshining her tragedy. That's tough. Back to Taylor. Her ectopic pregnancy and miscarriage is directly followed by a chemical pregnancy and another quick miscarriage. So you can only imagine how she's feeling physically, emotionally, mentally. It's not good. We're not in a good place. She's still with Dakota. So they go out on a date where he tells her that he really needs his partner to also be sober due to his addiction issues and asks her to stop drinking. Which, fair enough that that's what you need from a relationship. Also, though, fair enough that Taylor's not on board with that. And you would think it's clear cut. These people just shouldn't be together. But Dakota thinks, let's talk marriage. Basically, he also wants to get married in the Mormon church, which is going to require a lot more from Taylor than just sobriety. And again, she is not on board, but we just breeze past that. Taylor then says that she wants to drink that very night. And I cannot be absolutely positive, but I believe the events that I'm about to discuss did occur on that evening. And I'm going to tell you what happened on the show, but also what Taylor claims happened on her episode of The Vial Files. We do have a firm date for the events that I'm about to discuss, which is February 17th of 2023. So that night, she goes to a girls' night, drinks. Dakota picks her up, is pissed that she was drinking. But at this point, she is drunk. She is, in her words, hysterically sad about everything that has gone on and still mad at Dakota for the whole Jenna sandwich. So she starts taking out all of those feelings on him. And I do get how if somebody has recently wronged you, that wound is fresh, and then they start judging you, they start getting angry at you, you're kind of like, what the hell? Like, I have had enough of you. I really want to emphasize that while I understand that she was in a bad state, and while I may be able to also empathize with where the emotions were coming from, I do not condone the actions that she took based on those emotions. No, no, no. We can have emotions and also not act on them in the way that she did. So let's get into that. So they get home and Taylor is screaming, crying, not throwing up, but throwing shit. Throwing shit. However, she said she didn't realize that her daughter was still in the room because she thought she was upstairs and already in bed. Not the case. Dakota did tell her, hey, your kid is in the room still. But apparently she kept going anyways. And it seems like a chair that she threw may have hit her daughter. They said they don't know for sure what really happened because her daughter was already crying just due to watching the altercation unfold. So it was hard to say if she was crying because of that or crying because something had hit her, and there was no physical damage, but they said it sounded like it hit her. So cut to, the cops are being called on them for DV. When they show up, Dakota claims that Taylor is hammered and has been throwing metal chairs that are actually putting holes in the walls. Taylor at first tried to say that he was also drunk, but later amended that statement and said he wasn't. However, she also said that he threw her into the garage and up against some furniture, and that she was so scared that she peed herself. Dakota did admit that he threw her into the garage. He claimed that it was self-defense and that he was scared for his life. However, he denies that he did anything else and maintains that he was fully sober. And since Taylor did admit to throwing the chairs, she gets arrested. And after the fact, on the Vial Files, she claims that she was 100% the aggressor, that Dakota didn't do anything wrong, that he put her in the garage because he didn't want her to keep attacking him. And she said she doesn't stand by any of the accusations that she made about him that we saw on the body cam from the cops. You would think, surely, that this relationship is at an end. But you would be wrong. You would be wrong. It pains me to say it. You're wrong. Even though she herself has said that it was not a good idea to stay with him through this incident and that they should have at least taken a break, we will have to continue wading through this bullshit. She says she immediately got help, started going to therapy, taking meds, did EMDR, is like trying to be a better mom, has been sober since that night, and also couples therapy with Dakota since they refused to break up. So that is the end of episode 1. And then episode 2 takes place 11 months after she got arrested, which would put us in January of 2024. She was charged with aggravated assault and got 3 years of probation. And of course, they took a break from filming, but Taylor also said that they considered removing her from the show entirely. And according to Jesse, this is when she, Layla, and Jen were brought into the cast, trying to fill a Taylor-shaped hole with 3 entirely different girls. All great girls, but not going to fill a Taylor-shaped hole. So they ended up bringing her back. Supposedly not all of the women were a fan of this. And I understand the concern, but like, this show wouldn't have gone anywhere without her. I'm sure that's what they also told the women of the swinging scandal who didn't want to do it with Taylor. As for her and Dakota, Macy said that she got a couple calls from Taylor during this time where Taylor was saying she really needs to get out of this relationship, but that didn't take. And now she is heavily pregnant, terminal stages, in episode 2. So Taylor doesn't talk to Macy about Dakota anymore, which we all know about that. When you are the friend who really gives their honest opinion, you might not get all the details anymore because they know what you're going to say and they don't want to hear it. Dakota is still discussing marriage. Taylor is still not ready, but he is convinced and has also somehow managed to convince her that it's really just that she's pushing him away because she's afraid. He's somehow also now moving in with her. And her parents absolutely hate that. They still hate Dakota. And while they're having a heated discussion about it, Mr. Bonehead himself pulls up into the driveway. I'm sure you can tell by the photo of him, but he is playing the role of full-grown man who is also still a frat boy. However, he is really trying his best to make her parents feel better about the whole moving in situation. Not the best, but his best. It's not that good, but it's his best. That's all he can do. And they even throw in that they will go to church together just to appease them. And I will say, despite hating him, her parents would prefer that she marry him since she's pregnant with his child. Flawed logic, courtesy of the Mormon Church. As you can imagine, due to all of this, Taylor is once again isolating from the group. And with all this space away from her, Whitney and Michaela and Macy have plenty of time to talk about all of her messiness. And as a businesswoman, Whitney specifically feels like Taylor is a threat to their brand image as a group. So she wants her out. And at the same time, Whitney is also telling them about this potential vibrator brand deal that she's contemplating. And a vibrator is so a no-no in the church, okay? But as I said, she's a businesswoman. Thank God Whitney's mom chimes in with a reality check for everybody, and they discuss how the church is very anti-sex, they're anti-sex ed. It does still sound like they're trying to make it seem like in present day it's a little bit more of a gray area in the church. It's not. It never was, and it still isn't. Despite that, though, Whitney decides to do the deal for empowerment, and because she's a businesswoman. They're playing it as empowering and like the next generation of Mormons. This is our new brand. But let's once again be clear. Mormonism is a high control religion, and that behavior is not approved. I think it's unfair and irresponsible to promote it as anything else. At this point, Taylor wants to stop isolating, so she's throwing a baby shower and inviting everybody. And beforehand, she meets up with Macy to discuss the impending event, and of course, also Dakota. Apparently, some incident occurred where Taylor was at a party that her ex ended up showing up to, and Dakota got really mad at her and was like berating her for it. Macy is not down with that. And Macy is also actually pretty clear that she hates this man, and more than that, she hates them together. They are not a good pair, but Taylor swears they're being less toxic. When Macy asks for some concrete examples, we don't have any to share. But she swears it's happening, and Macy's like, listen, I have sympathy for you. I have empathy for you. And I also, at the same time, am going to need you to get the hell away from this man. And you know that this man sucks because the minute that Taylor mentions that she was talking about their relationship with Macy, he is full meltdown mode. She hates me and she's so petty and she has no right. Talking specifically for a second to my friend that I am making this video for primarily, I'm having flashbacks. I'm having flashbacks to some of our times. To a man who I know was probably talking shit about me and was like, she hates me. I did. And I had every reason to. But let's get back to the girls and Taylor's baby shower. Whitney does not go. She does not attend because from her point of view, this is a play for Taylor to be queen bee, and that's not a hive that she wants to be a part of. Plus, she also says that her relationship with Taylor is online only. They don't have a friendship outside of that, even though we've seen them hang out at this point multiple times. I guess it was for a reality TV show, so she might be right. It might be online only. Regardless, Whitney's not interested in doing offline with her right now. Michaela says accurately, I think, that Whitney knows that if she's not there, attention will be drawn to her absence, and she also wants to be queen bee. And if that was indeed the scheme that she was trying to pull, it does come to fruition because Taylor's mom calls her during the party to ask her why she didn't show up. And Whitney's like, that's really not a conversation for you and me. It seems like a conversation for me and Taylor. And it reminds me of this girl that I was loosely friends with in middle school. Something had happened. I didn't sit with her at lunch, or I wouldn't do a group project with her. I don't know. God knows. But nothing that important. And she told me, well, my mom's gonna call your mom about it, and they're gonna talk about it as like a threat. And I said, my mom doesn't take that shit. Because she doesn't. I'm sure she declined the call. But there were mothers like that who needed to go ahead and be in everyone's business, be in their children's business. Weird behavior. And you know what? That girl actually did have her moment on the internet later on. A bigger moment than I've had for sure, but I'd say to her detriment. Actually, I don't think there's even a question. Yeah, it was to her detriment. Anyways, moving on, I certainly can't say her name. If you want to know, offline with me. If you can't offline with me, then you'll never know. Moving on to episode 3, after that personal anecdote, Jen hosts 2 different events during this episode. So let's just discuss her situation in a little bit more detail real quick. Jen's husband has just graduated from college at 27, and he is gearing up to go to med school to become a surgeon like all of the men in his family. The first story that we're told about their financials is that his parents gave him a big chunk of money for his med school, but then he gambled it all away. So now Jen is covering the costs. But while he irrefutably and admittedly has gambling issues, he has more recently claimed that this story is not correct. He has said that his parents were paying for med school and he never even saw any of that money. They just paid it directly to the school. It never even made it to his hands at all, so he had no opportunity to gamble it away. The money that he actually gambled away, according to him, was money that he had made at his summer door-to-door salesman job. It's a very common job that Mormons have. We really can't get into it, but very interesting, huh? So anyways, his money that he gambled away. Yay, no worries. However, Jen does worry, regardless, because it's not actually his money, it's their money. He has a family to support. They have children. And if he's gambling away his income, that's money that now Jen has to earn to make up for it. And while he's more than happy for her to have plenty of money to support him and their kids, he also has very traditional values. So he thinks that Jen's job is silly and frivolous and less than his. Well, if only he actually had a job. Basically, this is the same thing that happened where old money royal people with titles would marry these rich American heiresses because they're broke, but then they would still consider themselves to be the rich one and like look down their nose at the new money wife, even though they are no money in reality. Some other stuff to know about Zach: he does not like it when she goes away for the weekend or does anything that means that he has to babysit his own children. He does not like the Momtok women because he finds them to be trashy, and people call him the White Walker online. And I don't feel bad. So as I mentioned, she's throwing some parties this episode. The first one being his college graduation party, and they have a whole soda shop setup going on. Mormons and their soda. They love soda. Also, this is just completely me shooting the shit right now. It is not in my notes. I do not have a source for this. Could just be completely wrong. But I heard that Mitt Romney was drinking sodas on the campaign trail when he was running for president. Don't you miss those times? I know. Anyways, when he was running for president, they caught him drinking soda, and at the time, it wasn't allowed in Mormonism. But then the church changed the rules so that he would still be within them, basically. That's what I heard. Again, could be completely not true, but it's an interesting story if it is, you know? However, there is tension at this soda shop party because Jessie and her husband brought a flask. And some feel that it's disrespectful because their parents are there, and if the parents were to see, they would absolutely hate that. I do want to remind us, though, that everybody on this board is of legal drinking age. I know that me mentioning a grad party and parental oversight might make that feel confusing, so I just want to reemphasize it. They all are legally allowed to drink, and also every single one of them has at least one child. So they are all parents themselves, actually. I mean, I'm not saying don't respect your elders. Maybe. That might be what I'm saying a little bit. I guess I'm just saying at some point you're one of the elders. And living your life the way that you want to live it isn't disrespectful. That's just kind of a them problem, I think. But this is just Mormon culture, and there is definitely a divide that is starting to be shown. There's clearly a group of more devout Mormons, Macy, Jen, and Whitney, And kind of Michaela tangentially. Like I said, I don't think that she considers herself Mormon, but she's just a little bit more modest and conservative by nature. And all of these girls follow the Mormon rules, pretty much. Certainly they don't drink or do, but they do drink soda, and they do like to get plastic surgery, specifically Botox, because you can be given laughing gas for Botox, which is interesting. I didn't know that you could get laughing gas for Botox, mainly because I haven't had Botox, but also because it just doesn't seem like something you would need laughing gas for. I was under the impression that it was just kind of like a needle. And I don't think you actually do need it. I think it's more of an elective thing. And they are electing to get that laughing gas. I've never had laughing gas. My mother was very anti-laughing gas. She's kind of Mormon in that way. She's not. She was just like, no. I think she probably just didn't want to deal with me on laughing gas. I'm already a handful as is. But anyways, their Botox and laughing gas situation is very classic, like letter of the law versus spirit of the law. And it does get confusing with Mormonism because, as I have mentioned, prophets can make rules, change them, dissolve them. You know, how do you keep up? You've got to be devout. But they certainly think that they have the moral high ground. And that also kind of helps to explain, I think, why Whitney might want to be the queen bee versus Taylor, why there could be factions in that debate. I don't think there really is, though. Like I said, I don't think anybody super wants Whitney to be the queen bee or sees her that way, other than Whitney. Now, the other event that Jen hosts this episode is her baby's blessing. Jen initially invited Demi and Jesse, but now she's thinking she wants to uninvite the bad girls because it's a sacred ceremony and she finds them to be irreverent. And this is, of course, co-signed wholeheartedly by Whitney. Michaela, on the other hand, doesn't want them to emphasize the divide. She wants them to keep a united front with Momtok. And she also mentions that she thinks that Whitney's the leader. I completely forgot about this until I saw it just now in my notes. I guess somebody thinks she's the leader. I don't think she thinks it for that long, though. Just a spoiler alert, Michaela will at some point hate Whitney to her very core. But right now, I guess she likes her. And when Jesse and Demi find out that they aren't invited, they go ahead and call Jen up to ask about it. Personally, I would just not show up. I just wouldn't go. But this is messy reality television, so they call her. And she does kind of shift the blame to her husband on this one. Rightfully so, to some degree, because he was definitely involved in the decision. But she says it's basically just too sacred for some filthy girls like this. Sounds like I'm like, sorry. And that's not how I meant it, and you know how I meant it. Anyways, the divide is dividing. So on the day of, all of the sinners, as I think they refer to themselves, but certainly the public and the producers refer to them, Taylor, Demi, Jesse, and Layla, they all go bowling instead. That's some sinner shit, if ever I've heard it. I know that all of the people in my life that I think of as huge sinners also are in bowling leagues. It's just, you know, you can't place it, but it's definitely the devil's game. Oh, and we also get a brief note about how the priesthood in Mormonism is only for men. I'm sure that that comes as no surprise. I mean, if women were allowed in priesthoods, they wouldn't have been able to ruin their reputations so easily. A woman would have stopped some of that shit. Moving on, though, we have one last party to cover in this episode. Demi's Galentine's Day party. In my mind, this event was for the sole purpose of filming Michaela, Macy, and Whitney getting ready together and talking shit about the sinners. And Whitney mentions a piece of lore that will become important to this fandom. You know, it's not necessarily serious, but it's important. And that is the Fruity Pebbles. Demi apparently confided in her about some sort of sexual act referencing Fruity Pebbles that her and Peepaw did. And they will never live that down. They've never said up front what this actually was. Of course, people have theories. I think most people at this point know, or at the very least, we're pretty sure we know what it is, but I'll keep an air of mystery there for them. Sure. So Whitney decides to bring a box filled with Fruity Pebbles as a gag gift for Demi at this Galentine's party that she's hosting for everybody. She's going full Regina George mode. They're even making Mean Girls references. And Whitney's gift, it does not go down well at all. It goes down like a lead balloon with Demi. She's like, I thought this was a classy party. And where is the class? Where is the decorum? I thought you were supposed to be the classy one here. I will say, Whitney has said that she actually cleared this gift idea with Demi ahead of time, and she had thought it was funny too, which is apparently why when Demi reacts really poorly to the gift, Whitney seems to get really pissed off. She says that's because she felt sabotaged in the moment. I can't pretend to know the truth of the matter, but that's just what Whitney has said. The baby blessing is also brought up at this Galentine's party, and it makes everyone real uncomfortable. But then Taylor says that she will also be having a baby blessing, and everyone is invited. She's inclusive, and she also knows that you catch more flies with honey. In the next episode, we have Macy's birthday weekend trip. This is not shown in the show, but through my listening to a million podcasts that they were on afterwards, we know that Demi's mother was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer right before this trip. So she's emotionally delicate, to say the least, right now. Also, unbeknownst to her, Whitney is pregnant, so between her and Taylor, we have 2 rounds of pregnancy hormones in the mix. I'm sure everything will go super smooth. The first fleet of girls to arrive is Taylor, Demi, Jessie, and Michaela. And they discuss the Fruity Pebbles incident. Basically, Demi and her husband are having a bit of an issue with that right now because Demi told Whitney and now Whitney has told the world. And even Michaela says that Whitney probably went a little bit too far on that. At dinner that night, Demi, the producers, decides that they should all write each other anonymous questions and put them in a truth box and then pick them out at random, read them, and discuss them as a group. Obviously, this truth box and its contents will continue to come up, but let's just discuss the relevant and interesting parts. And I think I'll read these as if I am interviewing them. Whitney, why don't you like Taylor? Are you just jealous of her clout? Whitney says that she's not jealous of Taylor's clout. She's jealous that the public forgave Taylor when she had this swinging scandal, but they really didn't extend that same kind of grace to Whitney when she was dancing in the hospital when her newborn had RSV. And the way in her interview recounting the whole incident, she cries not at the part about her child having a life-threatening illness, but at the part where she's talking about the internet backlash. It's a level of ickiness that it's hard to describe. And yet simple. What the? Anyways, then they ask Taylor about Dakota and that Jenna girl, and she says that yes, she would leave him if she found out that they slept together because he swore they didn't. Then there's a comment mentioning that Demi apparently said that Jen was too Mormon. Basically, she's like kind of bragging about it and holier than thou. And Demi owns up to this. She's like, I don't know. I mean, it gets annoying sometimes. Sorry. But we find out that Whitney was the one who told Jen that Demi had made this comment. So when Whitney is getting all giggly over their confrontation, Demi turns on her and is like, it's really interesting that you're laughing because you agreed. You, me, and Macy all agreed when we were talking about it. Whitney denies it, of course, but Demi doubles down. She's doing direct quotes, like me. And she says that Whitney said, yeah, I totally know what you mean. She can be that way. She also shoots down Whitney's attempt to say like, no, this is between y'all. I'm not a part of this. And Demi's like, yeah, the original note is between me and Jen. But the part where you're going around telling everybody that I'm the only one talking trash, that's between me and you. Jen then also decides to call out Demi for saying that Taylor is white trash, which everybody is gagged by, including Taylor. And who told Jen that? Why, Whitney, of course. Unfortunately for Demi, Taylor is pregnant. As I said, terminal stages, and she has not come to play. No. She admits that her swinging days, trash city. But what about when you took off your dress in front of my boyfriend to put your mic on, Demi? Yes, that happened. But Demi says, well, I wasn't trying to seduce him. If he's looking, that's not my fault. I'm not the swinger here. The gloves are off. And this bit was apparently cut down quite a bit in post because Demi says her and Taylor were actually fighting for a while. And we finish off with Whitney answering a question that Demi is her least favorite in the group. And Whitney also decides afterwards that she's mad at Macy too for not defending her enough with Jen and Demi. I'm gonna need you to pick a struggle. Honestly, Macy and I think, are both of the same opinion at that time that there are much bigger things at play. We simply can't be mad at everybody. Demi does end up genuinely apologizing to Taylor and offers her the big bed as a show of goodwill. So we do end the night with some sense of peace. Not a lot, but, you know, a little bit. And what do we have if not hope in this world, you know? On the morning schedule, we have TikToks, followed by a confrontation between Whitney and Taylor upstairs, and shit-talking time downstairs. The girls use this time to discuss how Whitney is a jealous bitch, and how apparently she told Demi that when she was doing the RSV hospital dance, she did it for sympathy and engagement on social media. And that revelation was given to Demi after they did ketamine therapy together. Ketamine? Is that Mormon approved? No, it's not. The girls don't know what to think anymore. Upstairs, Whitney is telling Taylor that she didn't come to her baby shower because they're not close, and she didn't tell her ahead of time because she didn't think she needed to. Which seems pretty straightforward, simple. But then she goes on the offensive and she says, I tried to be Taylor's friend, but she never asked me about my philandering husband. As a businesswoman, she sees no ROI. No ROI. And so what's the point in being someone's friend? Taylor's trying to be understanding, but Demi is not. She hears this while in her shit-talking time downstairs and heads up to finish Whitney. They argue and Taylor tries to come in with the like hurt people kind of rhetoric, but Demi says, no. That only works if you take accountability. And then Whitney runs off crying. That's what accountability is, guys. Some of the girls console Whitney while Demi calls her a twat and mocks her for being fake and two-faced, and then she heads in for another round. At first, the girls are thinking Demi is taking things a bit too far, but then they realize she's making some points, and they're like, actually, yeah, you do like to air out people's shit-talking to make yourself seem like the nice one, Whitney. What the hell is that about? And Jesse says that Whitney is only your friend until she gets what she wants. And that one even gagged Whitney. Then it's time for a birthday dinner. Who's ready to party? Oh, no one? Well, that's weird. Why not? I am on Taylor's vibe, though. Sometimes you've just got to suck it up for the sake of others. In this case, Macy, who is trying to have a birthday party. Now, this is lore that I received via Whitney on the Squeeze podcast. But apparently, at this dinner, Macy inquired about Whitney's ketamine therapy, which she did not know that Demi had shared with the whole group. And she was very emotional about this revelation because for her, doing that therapy was a vulnerable moment and a dark time, and she didn't want it to be aired on television. And she said that she doesn't think that Demi would have told them at all if the truth box revelations had not come out. Maybe she was feeling some spite toward Whitney. So Whitney goes and cries in the bathroom, and then she puts on a smile to bring out Macy's cake. And I cannot let this slide without pointing out that the producers zoom in on a piece of toilet paper that is stuck to her shoe in this moment. I'm not saying she doesn't deserve it, but if that were to happen to me, I would be resorting to tactics that can only be described as evil. I would try and ruin someone's life, surely. But after this weekend, Whitney claims this is when she started distancing herself from the rest of the group. Specifically, the ketamine therapy business being aired out was her last straw. I'm sure if she had seen the zoom in on the toilet paper at that time, that would have been her last straw. I just can't stop thinking about how many people, how many rounds of edits that shot made it through. Not a single person on that crew is her friend. No, not a single one of them. They actually, I think, are wishing her the worst. As I mentioned, Whitney has begun to distance herself. So in the next episode, she leaves the group text and she also blocks Demi. But all of our little sinners over here are like, oh, so you want attention. Okay, well, the thing is we don't care. So what you'll be getting is shit talking. And by the way, that does piss Whitney off because she's like, wait a second. Why is nobody calling me and asking about it? What? And then she sees they're doing a paint splat party without her because she's not in the group text and clearly seeking space from them. That's offensive. And they must be doing it just to piss her off. So they are really on her bad side now. From Whitney's perspective, all of these friendships are transactional and they are all jealous and competitive. And she thinks that there's no mom talk without her, which, to be fair, we do need a villain. Meanwhile, Jessie is nominating her BFF Miss Demi for the new Queen Bee since Whitney was too desperate and is now gone, and Taylor honestly doesn't give a shit. Even though she still knows that she's the leader, and publicly, I would say everyone else does as well. But Taylor took a step back because she is pregnant, as I have mentioned multiple times, heavily pregnant, and she can't have this drama. However, she does make the time to go and get photos for Macy's new brand, since she's pregnant and the brand is like prenatal gummies or something like that. But she brings Dakota. Girl! In her mind, this is a chance for Macy and Dakota to hash it out and make peace. But in Macy's mind and on the schedule, this is business. They're here to work. And then Dakota hijacks the shoot and asks for couples photos of them on Macy's dime, because she's the one who's hired this photographer for her business. If it were somebody else, maybe we would let it slide, but not for this man. Macy does come over to Taylor's house on another day, though, to talk to Dakota, and she's pretty direct. Hey, I was abused, and I'm seeing red flags, asshole. But he says she's feeding things in Taylor's ear and getting between them. Macy's response? Well, if you aren't doing shitty things, then nothing will get between you. And Taylor points out that it's really not Macy's fault that she can't trust Dakota. It's Dakota's fault, because he's the one who was hooking up with other girls in the beginning and lying about it and letting the truth trickle in over time. And she's not over that. So Dakota goes ahead and decides to redirect, takes the wheel. He's gonna go and they're gonna do a little trip to Gaslight City. And Taylor will be, she'll be a prisoner in Blame Street Prison. Everything I hear from him, it's gaslighting, it's redirection. It's hard to take, is what it is. But to pivot so that I don't become even more mean than I feel I probably am right now, we have Layla's divorce party during this episode too. Whitney was invited previously, and she decides she's gonna show up. And immediately confront Jessie because she doesn't understand the girls' trip comment that Jessie made about her being a user. And Jessie's like, yeah, well, multiple people have expressed that opinion, plus you're always telling everybody everything seemingly for your own gain. What don't you get about that? So Whitney moves on to being mad about how nobody checked in with her after she left the group text. And Jessie's like, sorry we didn't pass the test, it's just that we didn't give a... We didn't give anything. We didn't give shits. We didn't give anything that you could give. We're not giving it. And Whitney is so upset by it all. But I don't feel bad. In episode 6, we find out that Whitney has unfollowed all of the girls. And at this point, Macy and Jen, who have been the only ones defending her, basically are like, what can we do with that? I mean, that's just silly, girl. And then Jessie hosts a painting party. Specifically, we are painting our privates at this party. Girls' privates, no boys allowed, obviously. But this is because Jessie has an upcoming surgery. Yes. And she's very open about it and handles it with humor, which I love. Taylor and Dakota are, of course, still fighting. And she's like, dude, I am about to give birth to your child. Could you just stop hassling me for 1 second? All of the issues really stem from the fact that she doesn't really want to commit to marriage yet, and he wants her to, quote unquote, surrender to him. And he thinks if a kid doesn't get her to marry him, what will? Maybe, I don't know, acting right. Let's try that. Let's try that on for size. So when she shows up to her mother's house solo and Dakota is not answering any of her calls, her mom thinks it's a great idea for her to lie and say that she's going into labor so that he will answer. Obviously, not a good move. So he's all guns a-blazing and he's starting to say, oh, it's all your daughter's fault. I'm busting my ass over here. And he even says, tell your daughter to commit to me or end this. Taylor is so done. Cannot blame her there. But she also wants him to help take care of the kid. So she's feeling kind of stuck. And speaking of Taylor potentially going into labor, that is the reason that Dakota gives for why he is tagging along on their girls' trip to Vegas. Yes, even though he was not invited and did not ask. But you know what? That's probably a valid excuse. What excuse does Zach have? Because he's also tagging along uninvited. He doesn't have one, is the answer to that. And everybody just thinks both of these men are controlling. And you know what? They would be correct. Case in point, when Jen makes a joke about what if they all end up going to Magic Mike, Zach replies by saying that being divorced with 2 kids would be pretty hard, so you can make that decision. And then he goes straight into his plans to gamble away $2,500 of her hard-earned money that night. Okay. Needless to say, they're also going through a rough patch, mainly because he doesn't help with anything ever. He is such a leech. And both Jen and Zach are punished by having to spend a 5-hour car ride with Taylor and Dakota while they fight the whole time. Dakota's already fighting her before they leave on the trip. She actually gets into the car without him because she's like, I am so sick of the complaining and the insecurity and getting so emotional and trying to fight me at every turn. Get out of my damn car. And she was so right for that. But then he shows up at Jen's house, and then Jen and Zach are trapped in a car with them while they continue to fight. Luckily, the men are not allowed in the house with the girls because this is a girls' trip. They have to go and stay somewhere else. Although they do go ahead and come in at first to eat their food and be annoying. And right before they leave, Zach says, no strippers. And obviously, the girls are judging him. So he kind of backtracks a little bit and is like, well, Jen's her own person. She's an adult. She can make her own decisions. So they ask him, oh, are you serious? And would you believe it? He says no. Why would he be? She's not her own person. She's not an adult. She surely can't make her own decisions. That's what this man is like in couples therapy, mind you. Can you imagine what he was like before? Now, you might be wondering if Whitney is in attendance on this girls' trip, and the answer is no. She is not going to Vegas. Instead, she is looking into homesteading. If it worked for Ballerina Farm, why not her? Oh, and Jessie is currently high on painkillers from her recent surgery for the entirety of this trip. So just when you're picturing the events that unfold, please imagine Jessie is on a level of zen that the other girls could simply never, ever match. And as soon as the men leave, Jessie is like, hey girls, I got us tickets for something tonight. And it's for Layla's birthday, so no backing out. And also, no further information given. It's Chippendales. Of course. And not just Chippendales. They're getting the VIP experience. They meet the boys backstage. Layla rubs oil all over their bodies. It's the whole nine. Demi and Jessie said later on the Sophia with an F podcast that they think that Taylor and Jen would have been game for Chippendales if it was not for the men. But of course, their men are there. And since they know it will be bad for them, Jen, Taylor, and also Michaela are kind of pulling a Harry Potter, making no noise and pretending they don't exist. Yeah, they're struggling a little bit in the corner. But despite that, of course, the husbands are all pissed anyways that they're even in the presence of Chippendales. Personally, in my opinion, I just wouldn't be that interested in a Chippendales performance. Like, it might be funny for like 10 minutes, but then I think I would just get bored, honestly. Apart from that, though, I don't really know where the line is on that. I do think going to strip clubs is disrespectful to your partner, personally. But I don't think I would classify Chippendales as a strip club. It's more like a performance, you know? You're not like paying for individual treatment kind of thing. I don't know. So I'm not sure, basically. Jen says if they try to dance on her, she is absolutely out. And I do understand not wanting them to dance on you or bring you on stage. I would be mortified, but that's not the reason. The reason is because she will be divorced if they do. She is in full panic over this, and Zach is already calling her and telling her he doesn't want to be married to her because she has stepped foot into Chippendales. Nothing has even happened yet. She's in the lobby, probably, at this point. And Taylor's stance regarding Dakota is basically, whatever. He's always mad anyways, so who cares? And that's when you know it's over. Michaela, Jen, and Taylor do end up leaving Chippendales to go and sulk, and Dakota ends up venting to Brett, Demi's husband, on the phone, and he makes him feel better somehow. Zach, on the other hand, is continually berating Jen, telling her that he doesn't want to be with a girl who has no values and morals. He's done with their marriage, threatening to take their kids, saying he doesn't love her anymore. And in the process, the rest of the couples in the group are catching strays as well. He's talking about, oh, she cheats on him, she walks all over him, blah, blah, blah. And a beautiful TikTok user by the name of Selah Vienna did catch a screenshot of some of the texts that he sent to her for us to all read. And you know, my eyes, they snapped into 2020 vision mode for this shit. So he says, seriously, I don't want to hear one more time about your heart. Start taking accountability for your actions and the situations you put yourself in. You're a grown woman. I just want to clock that he did use Y-O-U-R instead of Y-O-U-R-E. And you know what? I don't want to be the grammar police, but somebody should be the police for him. And you know what? If that's all I can do, then that's what I will do. Moving on. Doesn't matter your intention. You were there, and that's the image you portray of yourself, family, church, etc. Everyone you represented with this platform. The fact you would have to ask me is, and then he uses the R word, I don't care how many times people try and make it come back, it's dehumanizing, and I won't use it. And I do find it extremely offensive. Sorry, tangent. Moving on. He then references two people that I couldn't really even make out their names, and they're not people that we know about anyways, so whatever, let's just call them Brad and Angelina. Would you ever find Angelina asking Brad that? No, because she represents her own values and her husband and would never put herself in that situation. The fact we are even having this conversation is sad, especially after everything with the temple. And then the rest is pretty much cut off, but we've seen enough. And you might be picturing him in a hotel room crying while he's sending her these messages. That's definitely what Jen is picturing. But it turns out that actually he was having a grand old time in the casino, gambling, while he was harassing and guilting her. Reminds me of this time when this man screamed at me until I cried and then turned around and enjoyed an entire Chance the Rapper concert. Like immediately. I'm not even kidding. We were at the concert. He enjoyed it. I was in full tears. You would never have known that anything was going wrong in his life, the way he was acting. You know what? Whatever. No worries. He got it out. And that's what's important. Am I right? Demi says, rightfully, aren't you guys miserable? And at least Taylor is going to be honest and go ahead and say, yeah. And thanks for noticing. I am miserable. Eventually, Zach finishes gambling and tells Jen, you can come and meet me at this location to talk right now or we're over. And she goes. She goes to the location. So now Jen is MIA. I would be personally extremely worried for her safety. I don't think that they are. And I'm not really sure why. I mean, I don't know. They know him. I don't. Maybe they also just feel like the people that they know are not capable of doing horrible things. I personally would be pretty concerned at this point. Dakota calls Taylor in the morning and is again being pissy and insecure. What's new? So Taylor hangs up on him. I'll hold for applause. Yeah, give it up for her. He later shows up at the house, and I do love that they used very ominous music when he arrives. Like this is a true crime show. It certainly feels like it's on the verge. To me, at the very least. At the very least. The girls don't seem at all interested in letting him in, but he runs up to Taylor's room anyway. I'm scared.
I'm scared. I don't know what was that, guys, and I didn't do that. I'm scared.
He's there to apologize, but Taylor is so done. At this point, she's just sad. So because she's not responding in the way that he wants, he starts going on about how she was so different when they met, so loving, and now she just sucks. Okay, right. So she doesn't trust you. That's the reason that she's not so loving anymore. And it's a good reason, you loser. I know I keep calling him a loser, but I truly feel it. And if I saw him on the street, I would also call him a loser then. Later, all of the girls go to dinner and they call Jen, who has been MIA still up until this point, but she finally answers the phone and she's like, oh my God, guys, no, everything's fine. Don't worry about it. No one believes you. Nobody believes you. After dinner, most of the girls go to bars, but not Taylor, Michaela, and Macy. Taylor can't go because she's on probation, and Macy has something that she wants to tell Taylor. Back to that in a minute. Why is Michaela there with them? I don't know. Does a girl always have to have a reason? She's just there. I'm going to hold y'all in suspense for just a second regarding Macy's news for Taylor, because Jen ends up showing up to the bar, and then later they all reconvene as a group to discuss Jen's issues, of which there are many. She says he apologized, and then she says, yes, he has these narcissistic traits that come out in situations like this every few months, but who's to say it wouldn't be the same in another marriage? Did he tell you that? Is that what he said? Also, there are so many men in the world. Let's maybe ponder that option. There's also a lot of women. Hey, if you're interested. And being single is an option. Being single is an option. It's amazing news, but not one that she wants to hear, I'm sure. I think at this point, we need to just peel ourselves off the ground. I say peel because I think it's going to be like, you know, like when the cartoon characters like painted onto the ground because they've been run over. It's going to be like that. It's that bad, but we need to get up. Thank God for Jesse and Demi in this moment because they go in on this man. He's disgusting, he's crazy, and you're delusional if you think that he's ever going to change. Plus, do you really want this situation for your children? If not, you've got to leave. You've just got to leave. It's simple. And Jen just cries. Because what else is there left to do at this point? The girl needs help. And one more thing before we discuss Taylor. News of Zach's behavior does reach back to Whitney. Her husband tells her the tea. And when she hears that, she says that she can see where Zach's coming from. Including all of the horrible things that he said. Right? Now, on to the news that Macy had for Taylor, because this is important. Apparently, somebody sent her an Instagram confession saying that they had slept with Dakota before they knew that him and Taylor were together. It is once again tough times for Miss Taylor. She cannot catch a break. She confronts him about the confession. He says it's not true, someone's lying. And then, of course, he turns on Macy and gets mad at her and says she's trying to sabotage their relationship. And if she was, you're making it pretty damn easy. Luckily, Macy handles this really well, as she does with everything. She's very honest with him. She's like, I actually don't give a shit if you wanted me to come to you first with that information, because I'm loyal to Taylor and I don't give a about you, loser. How many times will I call him loser in this video? I don't know. Start drinking and find out. And on top of all of that, he's also annoyed that Taylor is always on the verge of breaking up with him, which does sound like a him problem. We are fully into the last episode of the season at this point, and we find out in this episode that Whitney is pregnant. She tells her family by putting the pregnancy test that has her piss on it into a cake for them to eat it. A cake for them to eat, which obviously none of them do because that is disgusting, but also I guess like good for you in the pregnancy. That is revolting though. Please, let's practice some hygiene here. And she's doing homesteading now. I don't know if that really took long term, but that's what she's up to in this episode. It's her new thing. And she's kind of having a final reckoning with Momtok as well. And that takes place at 2 locations. The first is Macy's brand launch for her baby mama gummies. Everybody is wondering if Whitney will show up to this event because she claims she loves Macy and they're so close. And frankly, Macy is one of the only ones who has stuck up for her at all. So they've all decided that if she doesn't show up by the time that the website launches that night, they're all going to unfollow her. And since she never shows up, they all do so. Very dramatically. This is a big moment for everyone. Is unfollowing somebody that big of a deal? In this scenario, it is. Because these girls work in social media. This is not just an unfollow. It's not just a little, oh, ta-ta for now. They are severing business ties. And Macy has said that Whitney did not call or text her the day of, but Connor, Whitney's husband, did text Macy's husband to tell him congrats on Macy launching her business. I think you and your husband need to coordinate about who you're going to send what texts to in these sort of really complicated dynamics. We needed to have a conversation about that probably. But anyways, that being said, for Macy, this is a big turning point in their relationship. And Jen has to leave this event early, by the way, because Zach is sick. And he needs mommy to take care of him. Now, the other event that completes Whitney's final battle with Momtok, so to speak, for this season is Michaela's birthday party. She's turning 24. She's about the same age as me, I think, maybe even younger. There is something uniquely strange about starting to talk about people younger than you on the internet. Like, there's a little twinge of just oddity that makes you think that maybe you should start minding your own business, but there's nothing fun about that for me. And I'm not really interested in unpacking it further right now. So let's keep going. As you might anticipate based on patterns we're seeing, Jen is unable to come to this event. She supposedly has the flu. Everybody pretty much thinks that Zach just didn't want her to come. Who's to say? And Taylor isn't there either due to the very minor inconvenience of childbirth. You know how it is. But guess who does show up? Whitney. From her account of this, which I do believe actually, she was forced to appear by production, even though everybody considers her removed from the group at this point, and she wasn't invited. And none of them are shy about letting her know that that's the case. They literally tell her, you're not Michaela's friend, and she doesn't want you here. So she goes to talk to Michaela, who is, of course, super cold to her, and then she decides to talk to Macy. She's trying to be all sweet and butter her up, and Macy's like, it's really not going to work that way. because all I wanted was 1 ounce of support for all of the support that I've shown you. And you were not capable of handling that task. So, quite frankly, I'm not very fond of you and I think you're selfish. Whitney apologizes and claims that she feels so sorry and she feels really guilty. But like she's smiling the whole time that she says it and like looking over at all the other girls and smiling. It's weirdo vibes. And yes, I do know that Whitney has had a resurgence in popularity on social media recently, but I again am taking this season, this piece of media for what it is. And we can talk about all that in the future. We've got plenty of time, guys. I'm not going anywhere. I know some of us wish I would. Sometimes me, but I'm not. Now, I've mentioned that Jen wasn't there. She's been not as present for sure. So let's just check in with her. She's over here letting Jesus take the wheel. And she claims she sees Zach's potential. He is a 27-year-old man with 2 children. So I think we're safely past the point of seeing potential. However, when he gets into med school and wants to move their entire family to New York, she's pretty reluctant, despite all that potential. She really wants them to take a beat first. Frankly, she's tired, and I think that she knows that med school, moving to a new city, trying to acclimate your children to a new city is all going to put a ton of strain on a relationship that is barely hanging on by a thread anyways. Plus, she knows her social media job will also suffer if she's away from the rest of the Momtok girls. He says, I don't care. So she's back to praying, although let me tell you, God doesn't even want to handle this man. I would know, we're close personal friends. And of course, they end up moving to New York, and she tells all of the girls that she's leaving Momtok because Zach doesn't want her to be in it. And I think we all kind of knew that already, but he's made it very convenient for her to exit. And he says, oh, Momtok, that's not important, blah, blah, blah. As if it's not her friends and her business. But she sacrifices for him because she thinks that this will be really good for him. If she thinks that this will fix him, she is dead wrong. In other news, Taylor's baby is here. Yay! But we can't have peace. We can't have peace. So Macy reaches out to Jenna. Remember Jenna? To recap, Jenna is the one that was like kind of seeing Dakota when Taylor was starting to see Dakota. She found out he was lying about it, blah, blah, blah. Macy reaches out to her because she's thinking maybe she's the one that submitted the anonymous confession. As I mentioned, there was some overlap. And we want to get some solid information on what happened between her and Dakota. And that is the cliffhanger for this season. So that's the end of season 1. Again, we do not have approximate dates for this because obviously they were filming in secret to save the drama for the screen. But this is definitely where it goes in the timeline regardless. Now let's talk about the lead up to and the aftermath of the release of the show. So about a month before the show is released on August 6th, the LDS Church seemingly is already responding to it just based on the teasers that they've seen, because that's all we had at this point. And by the way, all of this is coming from the LDS website, news releases, and some conference summaries. I kind of dug through their website. It wasn't my favorite task of all time, but you know what? I did it, and I did it for you. I did it for you. Mwah! Now, they did not mention Secret Lives of Mormon Wives by name, and I think that's because there was also a show about missionaries coming out around that time. So I think they were addressing both of them at one time. So here are some excerpts. Some portrayals are fair and accurate, but others resort to stereotypes or gross misrepresentations that are in poor taste and have real-life consequences for people of faith. While this is not new, a number of recent productions depict lifestyles and practices blatantly inconsistent with the teachings of the church. Okay, so I was correct. I was right. You know, there's something about being right that I just love. I don't know if anyone said that before, but I love being right. They also said, we understand the fascination some in the media have with the church, but regret that portrayals often rely on sensationalism and inaccuracies that do not fairly and fully reflect the lives of our church members or the sacred beliefs that they hold dear. And Taylor and Macy said about this statement that they think the church just had to put a statement out because they'd seen these trailers. There was some movie coming out about missionaries, like I mentioned, and they felt like they just simply had to say something. But they firmly believed that when the church saw the show in full, they would actually have no problem with it. I don't know if that panned out for them or not. I didn't see any other statements about the show on the website, so maybe they were completely fine with it. Either way, though, they got 2 more seasons, so I'd call that a win. Also, at the October General Conference, Elder Gary E. Stevenson, they got that right. That is an elderly name. Anyways, Elder Gary E. Stevenson of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles talked about unprecedented opportunities to serve, to unite with members and friends, and to introduce the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to more people than ever before in the coming decade. Which personally, I think means that they plan to capitalize on all this PR. Then, 2 weeks before the release on August 23rd, we hear from Chase. Chase, who, if you recall, was the ex-husband of her former best friend, Miranda. They were part of the swinging scandal. He was the one who confessed his feelings for her at the gym, but it was unrequited love. He is not the one that she had the emotional affair with. Chase posts a clip to TikTok showing Taylor, Miranda, and Camille getting the first ever offer for the TV show. And then he's being a little bit petty, saying obviously these three were the originals that were really wanted, and all the other girls were just thrown in to compensate for the fact that they couldn't have Miranda and Camille. Which, to be fair, I think everybody kind of knows that. I don't know. I don't think anybody was pretending that wasn't the case. Maybe Whitney. But since then, they have given us so much entertainment, there is no need for them to prove their worth. Who cares who they offered it to originally? We got what we needed in the end. And then we really get to the heart of why he's sharing this. He wasn't invited to the premiere, and he's bitter about it. And of course, he's also promoting his podcast. Don't piss me off. Don't piss me off. And because I didn't want to be pissed off further, no, I did not listen to his podcast. Moving on September 4th, just 2 days before the premiere that Chase is not invited to, Taylor goes on the Vile Files. On this episode, she told the whole story of the swinging scandal. She revealed a ton. All of the important stuff I have already told you. Don't even worry about it. But at the time, we were hearing things for the first time. At the time that this podcast was aired, she was with Dakota still, and she said when the show comes out, she knows shit's gonna get stirred. But for right now, she believes him. In 2024, she believes him. And she also said that they were in couples therapy. Has stuff happened since then? Oh, yes. But that's for other videos. We are in 2024 right now. Put yourself back in 2024 mindset. She also said, though, that she has no problem with Macy being a protective detective. That is what she is. That's the girl that Macy is. And I love that about her. And so does Taylor. And since we're on the subject of Jenna, that was the whole cliffhanger of the series. At the time, she said she had not spoken with Jenna about any of it, but she did have a little bit of a bone to pick with her because Jenna had actually reached out to Dakota a few times while knowing that him and Taylor were still together. She also mentioned, interestingly, that none of them thought that Whitney would be the villain of the season, which I think she undeniably is. Most of them thought that Taylor would end up being the villain. And there was definitely some theorizing in this episode that perhaps Whitney let Taylor back into Momtok after the swinging scandal, after she went to jail, because she thought that Taylor would be the villain. And she thought it would be good entertainment. I have no idea if that's true. Maybe Whitney had a vision that just did not get executed for this season. We'll never know. Well, we might know eventually, but we don't know now. And then on September 6th, Season 1 premieres. And this was Hulu's most watched premiere for an unscripted show ever. Ever. That includes the Kardashians. So yeah, people were very invested. This show truly is lightning in a bottle. And now around this time, in the beginning of September, right after the show premiered, Whitney decided she's going to tell the haters how it really is. And by haters, I kind of mean the general public, honestly, because most people felt like she should have said something to Macy before she missed her brand launch. But Whitney said she did. She shows us texts between her and Macy where she is saying she loves her, but she really needs space and she doesn't want to be around any of those girls. So she's not going to come to the event, but she reiterates her love and appreciation for Macy. She also texted her after the event saying sorry and that she's such a clown. She also said that she loves her, but definitely not in a lesbian way. Okay, no homo, queen. I don't know if she needed to make that disclaimer, if she really needed to qualify loving her with, but not in a lesbian way. But she did that. But Macy was having none of this from Miss No Homo Queen, Whitney. She basically commented and said, okay, so what you've shown is texts where you were rude, told me you wouldn't come to my brand launch, and then waited until days after the event, after the birthday party, to text me again. So I think you need to say you're sorry. Sometimes I'm sorry are the hardest words to say, you know? She did have an opportunity to say those words, though, on September 9th, because she went on the No Filter podcast with Zach Peters, and it was just her and Macy. Honestly, shocking that Macy would go on a podcast with her at this point. Although I will say, Macy possesses the ability to be nice and cordial around people that she despises in a way that like somebody like me perhaps would not have. But also, this was released on September 9th, so it's definitely possible that it was filmed before they were airing out all of their business on social media with each other. But even if it wasn't, I mean, that's showbiz, baby. And I can see Macy being like, yeah, well, the show must go on, and I guess I'll have to just pretend like nothing is happening right now. And this is really the beginning of the PR circuit for the show. I've thought about how to organize this, and I think the best way would be to go topic by topic rather than repeating what they said on every single podcast. That just seems like a chore. So we'll talk about those things. There may be a few other little bits that I throw in there, but that's the main event. Before I go into it, though, I would just like to remind us that none of these women are reliable narrators. Nobody is a reliable narrator, not even me. Nobody. But definitely none of them on this topic, because they were all very present emotionally for everything. So just take all of these opinions with a grain of salt, and remember, we have only seen them on TV. Who knows what they're like behind the scenes, good or bad? Only God, only the Mormon God knows, you know? So on the No Filter podcast with Zach Peters, Whitney did address the RSV video, the one that she took with her baby in the hospital, and she said that she did regret it because of the outcome, because I know my intention going into it. Okay. However, after this podcast, she is very noticeably absent from the vast majority of interviews and podcasts that the rest of the cast is doing, except when she goes on The Squeeze with Mr. and Mrs. Taylor Lautner themselves. I do know that it's Lautner, but I'm not able to say it when I say the full name. I can only just say it right here. I can say Lautner, but then you ask me to say their name and I say Taylor Lautner, you know? Anyways, it does seem like Whitney very specifically chose their podcast. And I say this because apparently Mrs. Taylor Lautner was not initially very on board with having Whitney on the podcast, but on she was. And in this episode, she confirms that she did do press stuff initially before the show aired, and then she realized something was amiss based on the questions that she was being asked by interviewers and based on their reactions when she would say stuff like she likes Taylor, and they're sitting there, let's run the tapes back. So she was definitely getting the feeling that something was not right. Her and her husband were like Sharpay and Ryan in the cafeteria scene. Yeah. That I can see that probably did happen in their house. I can see them recreating it in my mind's eye. So it seems like after she noticed all of these things, she decided to hold back on press until she had actually seen the show. And then she saw the show. She figured out she was the villain, and also that everybody thought she hated Taylor, because it sure does look like she hates Taylor in the season. Now, this episode of The Squeeze interviewing Whitney actually didn't come out until September 24th, which was after most of the other interviews with the women. But I am going to talk about it first because it really encompasses Whitney's entire side of the story, all of her takes on the drama, and we don't really have many other sources from her once the season airs. So I think it's best if we just hear from her, and then we'll hear everybody else's point of views. She mentioned the whole debacle with Macy's launch party, reiterating that she did text her ahead of time and said that she felt uncomfortable attending. But she does regret sharing the screenshots to her Instagram, and she acknowledged that maybe she should have texted Macy on the day of. And don't worry, this doesn't get resolved. In fact, we won't get a resolution until season 2. But despite that, she claimed that she's great with Macy and Taylor and is closest to them right now. Apparently, Taylor and Macy have been there for her and supported her a lot post-show, particularly Taylor, who sent her a message saying, "Thanks for being there for me during my difficult time. I want to be there for you during yours." Whitney also said that she has no ill feelings towards the other women. But anyways, I'm about to tell you all of the ill feelings that she has towards each of the women as described by her. She said the real reason that she has resentment towards Taylor is because she wasn't really there for her when she found out about her husband's addiction and cheating. But Taylor just kind of had too much shit on her own plate to help her at that time. Taylor can't come to the phone right now. Why? Oh, because her life is also a total catastrophe. And on her friendship with Michaela, she did clarify about going to her birthday party and how that was producer-led. But she also said that she was very hurt because Michaela was apparently talking shit about her at Layla's divorce party. And she did talk to Michaela about this later, but it's still unresolved. And let me tell you, we don't know if that one will ever be resolved. It's hard to say because on the one hand, doing a reality show with that person, you're just constantly chewing at the stitches, you know? On the other hand, doing a reality show can really bond you to the rest of your cast, who are the only ones who also understand what you're going through and the public perception. So, up in the air. They also discussed when Demi told the rest of the girls that Whitney had apparently said that she only did the RSV video for clout during their ketamine therapy session together. And Whitney claims this is because while she was on ketamine, she was reliving all of the negative comments and internalizing them. But she says she doesn't believe that that was truly her intention and she was just in a really dark place. She also said that if she had known what the public perception of the video would have been and what it would turn into, she would never have done it. She also tried to explain that she always makes dancing videos and is answering questions in them, and her son was getting better and she was in her happy place. The hospital? Did you tell her that I said that she smelled like hospital? I absolutely did. What was your point in doing that? You said it. I sure did say it. And you smell like it too. I don't know what you want me to do about your aunt. Her legs are gone. All that to say that my mind isn't super able to compute what she means by that. Maybe TikTok dances are her happy place and it doesn't really matter where she's doing them? Still don't love that answer. I'm confused. And, it's completely natural to just jump to a Real Housewives of Salt Lake City quote when you are feeling that perplexed. It's completely natural. But she also did say that now she understands how it might have come across as insensitive and that she just wasn't thinking at the time, which I wish that had just been her whole statement. That's all she needed. Less is more. Now, here's what the other girls said about Whitney throughout their interviews. I'm also going to kind of have rolling credits during this time of the sources where these interviews or podcasts were from while I say what they said. Towards the beginning of the press circuit on September 13th, Taylor said that she thought her and Whitney were all good and had resolved everything, but you never know with Whitney. Macy said they cleared the air, but are not as close as they once were. And they asked Macy if Whitney was still halfway in the doghouse, as she said to her at Michaela's party. And Macy responded by saying 3/4. She's even farther in the doghouse? Damn. You think she'll do a TikTok dance in there? And according to Macy, Whitney apparently didn't like some sort of comment that Macy gave during one of the interviews, and seems like she was giving her a hard time about it. What gives you the right, girl? What? I don't know that we have that leg to stand on. What am I supposed to do about her aunt? She hasn't got legs. And unfortunately, I think Whitney may be the aunt in this scenario. I don't know if we have legs to stand on. But regardless of whatever that was, Macy did apparently reach out to Whitney after all of the hate. Whitney did not respond. She's very much isolating. And at the very beginning of the press circuit on September 10th, when Macy was asked about Whitney returning to Momtok, she said, I don't think so. And I do remember that there was talk around this time about whether she would come back to the show as a whole, because she doesn't have to be on Momtok to be in the show. But people were questioning whether she would even do that again, whether she would even do another season because of how she was being perceived. Although I think we all know she's probably locked into a contract. She is in season 2, despite still not being a member of Momtok. As for the women's general thoughts on her, in a Vile Files episode, they made it pretty clear that some of them think that she's more calculated, some of them kind of just think she's delusional. They also mentioned that before they filmed, they did research on reality TV, and Jesse would often send them clips talking about how the villain often actually comes out on top, monetization-wise. They end up with all the riches, but they were adamant as a group that they did not want to have a villain. However, now I think they're starting to question whether Whitney had her sights set on the prize. And Nick Viall also threw out a theory on this podcast that the women confirmed that they kind of agree with, which is that Whitney did not reach out to Taylor after her arrest just to be nice. It was because she wanted her on the show. She wanted her to be the villain. And so she was talking shit about Taylor in her interviews, thinking that Taylor was going to be the villain, not realizing things had switched. On the Sophia with an F podcast, Demi and Jesse said that they felt the edits were true to life. And they also disagree with Whitney saying that she got a bad edit. They also mentioned that they thought Whitney was the crew's favorite. Jesse also said that Whitney manipulates situations and wants to be in the know. And Jesse, Michaela, Layla, and Macy all described Whitney as an energy vampire, which is apparently a term that Nick Viall gave them. But this was on the So Bad It's Good podcast. So they didn't just agree with him, they're reusing it because they really agree with that term. Macy did say that she thinks maybe Whitney kind of did some things for the plot, so to speak, and then got very scared by all of the backlash and just completely spiraled. But many of the other girls said, no, I think she was like that before, actually. Demi, specifically on the Sophia with an F podcast, said that she went to high school with Whitney and that the patterns of behavior that we saw throughout the season were present at that time too. Also around that time, they said that they forget that Whitney was even part of their friend group at all, which she's not at the moment, but it's not a good sign for her returning. And Demi specifically also said that she doesn't respect her. Demi and Jesse also said that they felt like Whitney was in her Joker era because she was throwing out mysterious comments. She was alluding to information and secrets that none of the other girls were understanding the references to. And it seems like she was the only one who knew what the hell was going on in her mind. Michaela said that she thinks that Whitney wants to just keep getting away with things, never have to apologize, and move forward. But they're done with that. And speaking for just herself specifically, she said that even if Whitney did apologize, she would not be her friend again. And also said absolutely not in response to the possibility of building a bridge. Jesse, Layla, and Macy, in response to that same building bridges question, said that they could potentially forgive her if she were to apologize. But as of that interview happening, no apologies had been issued. And that's to them or seemingly anyone else, because by the end of the press circuit, they mentioned that none of them really had a relationship with her anymore and that she ghosted everybody. Even though Whitney claims that she's still close with Macy and Taylor on that episode of the Squeeze podcast, which came out a day before this episode, which was the De-Influenced podcast, and it was Macy, Taylor, and Michaela. But as I said, she is in season 2, so basically it's coworker vibes for all of them moving forward with her. Now let's talk about Zach and Jen. On this topic, once again, I will be sharing different perspectives, and we're going to start with that same De-Influenced podcast that Macy, Taylor, and Michaela were on. And this was definitely an interesting one because I believe the hosts are evangelical Christians of some sort, and it definitely seemed like they brought out the religious upbringings in these women. I think they made them feel safe speaking their more conservative opinions, which, if that's their opinion, I want to hear it, regardless of whether I agree or not. And it certainly makes for a more unique interview. And with that in mind, those three said that they weren't really on board with all of the other girls telling Jen to leave Zach. Like Taylor specifically said that she thought that they should work it out and basically Jen should give him more chances. I mean, we know that Taylor loves to give out chances. And is it the kinder approach to others? Yeah, it is. Is it the kind approach to yourself? Probably not. The hosts of this podcast did piss me off a little bit as well because they were sympathizing with him heavily and saying oh, the internet will assume that it's just Chippendales and say that he's toxic. But really, he's threatened and he just took a huge ego hit because she's more famous than him and more successful than him and makes more money than him and she's actually speaking her mind now. And so he's lashing out. And that's not toxic, apparently. So jot that down in your diary the next time that a man feels threatened by who you are and is jealous of you and wants to retaliate against you because of that. It's not toxic. And even if we entertain them and say it's not toxic, you know what else it isn't? Attractive. It is not attractive at all. I'm clenching. And along those lines of pro-Zach rhetoric, when the show aired, a bunch of Zach's family was posting on social media about Jen and defending Zach. However, according to Demi and Jesse, Vegas was not the first time that they saw that behavior from Zach. And they also said that there was plenty of scenes where she showed up to set crying. He couldn't even pull himself together knowing he would be on reality TV that people all over the world would watch. And I think the same thing when I watch Love Island. If you are acting this way when cameras are on you, what the hell are you doing when nobody can see? But what does Jen think? Well, she said that the show did make her realize that she was being treated poorly and that he was in the wrong. She questioned being in the relationship, and she also admitted that she thinks he has some narcissistic tendencies. But they've been in non-stop therapy since. Some trauma from his childhood has apparently since been revealed, and she thinks he's changing, and she still loves him right now and is going to stick by him. That's what she told us on the Vile Files. And that's the ending that we all love to hear, isn't it? And all throughout September, after the show was aired, Jen was posting constantly, very cryptically, on TikTok and Instagram, saying things like, "What may be tea for you is testimony for me." Anytime I hear somebody say testimony, I am kind of ready for a cringe giggle. And you know what? I know that they mean it to be serious, and it's serious to them. But it's also incredibly performative. So if you're going to perform, Don't expect me not to be an audience member, you know? And I never said that I was a good audience member. I try my best the majority of the time, but sometimes situations arise. Sometimes I am going to be like the girls at the grandmother's funeral in Pin 15. I'm sorry, but I won't apologize for it. I won't apologize for being myself and for what I think are very natural reactions to absurdism. Sorry. As for the current standings, Jessie mentioned on the Shenanigans podcast that Zach sent her an apology text, but she did not respond because she honestly just wasn't sure if it was sent to everybody and was just kind of generic or if it was a ploy. She's clearly not feeling that it's very genuine though. And on the So Bad It's Good podcast, Jessie, Layla, Michaela, and Macy said that they are cordial with Zach, but they definitely try to avoid him. And luckily, he's doing a lot of that work himself. Apparently, when they're in group situations, him and Jen kind of tend to isolate because they know everybody hates him and it's really uncomfortable. And supposedly Jen was even asking for a while if it was okay for him to come to couple stuff. So yeah, he's on thin ice, very clearly. And lastly, as long as I'm annoyed from talking about Jen and Zach, let's talk about Taylor and Dakota. So Macy agreed with Zach Peters' assessment that Dakota is very mindful of when the camera is on. And Taylor more or less confirmed that for me on the Shenanigans podcast when she said that he was very nervous to see the show and was really concerned that he would just look like a desperate loser trying to marry a girl who didn't want him. And I don't know if he's checking all of those boxes for everybody, but unfortunately for me, I would say he's probably checking many of them. Sorry, I didn't make you act that way. Listen, you made the rubric, not me. And I must say you're getting a high grade. I think the high grade is not a good thing, but it's a high grade. Overall, it seems like the girls mainly think that Taylor and Dakota are both self-sabotaging a little bit. However, throughout this press circuit, as you can probably imagine, she was asked numerous times how things were going with him, what was happening with Dakota. And while she really couldn't say much because they were already filming season 2, and obviously there's going to be plot points around that she can't spoil, but she did say at various times that they were good, working on things, taking it day by day, and ultimately the future of their relationship is a we'll see. It's not really the answer you want, whether you're Dakota or me. On my hand, I would say sometimes we don't need to wait and see. Sometimes surprises aren't the best. Let's step away. I'm sure Dakota is just kind of hoping that they'll end up together. It could be some others on his side. I just don't know him. But whatever's to happen, we certainly will see it in season 2. Wow. Well, thank you for watching, guys. Y'all have no idea how long this took. Of course, it is a labor of love. It is a labor of love, but it did take me a long time. I'm already working on videos for seasons 2 and 3 and a Love Island video. So if you don't want to miss that, if you want to see more of me, please subscribe. I would also very much appreciate a like, a comment, whatever you're willing to throw my way. Whatever you're willing to throw my way. And I'll talk to y'all next time. Love ya. Bye.